Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 451. The Ghost Boom. The shocking impact of the collision between the Seireitei arrow and the zanpakutō, gynecology, caused Kumraku Shunsui's eyes to freeze. The zanpakutō, gynecology, which was about to fall on Seireitei, was directly knocked away and almost slipped out of his hand. This sudden change caused the expressions of Kumraku Shunsui and Jikitijushiro to change, and they and Seireitei subconsciously looked in the direction of the source of the Seireitei arrow. At the highest point of the 4th Division's barracks, Senju Cheng stood there, with the Seireitei in his hand pulled to the full string. Cheng-ge. Although Kumraku Shunsui and Jikitijushiro had some guesses about this, they were still shocked when they saw Senju Cheng appear in front of them intact. How did this man survive the terrorist explosion caused by the Bankai, Sparrow v Thunder Whip? Compared to the shock and anger of Shunsui and Jikitijushiro, Seireitei was pure ecstasy and blurted out a sentence. Uncle Kurosaki. The moment Seireitei finished speaking, a large rain of spirit arrows fell from Senju Cheng's hands towards Shunsui and Jikitijushiro, with such a might that it seemed to completely flatten the entire area including Shunsui and Jikitijushiro. However, the overwhelming blue spirit arrow rain, from a distance, almost looked like a waterfall across the fallen 4th Division barracks. Not good at enjoying it alone. Shunsui crossed his two swords and swung out a materialized and cutting whirlwind, but it was instantly swallowed by the spirit arrow rain. Oh, no, Shunsui felt a little numb when he saw this. For Shunsui, who lacks long-range means, he may be able to dodge this rain of spirit arrows, but he cannot escape the large area of the 4th Division barracks under his feet. He had been warned by Unohana before not to use the 4th Division barracks as a battlefield, but he secretly used it to lure out Seireitei and even Kurosaki. If the 4th Division barracks were damaged on a large scale, just when some bad images instinctively emerged in Shunsui-kuku's mind, the seemingly thin figure of Jikitijushiro blocked Shunsui-kuku's way. All the flowing waves, turn into my shield, all the lightning, turn into my blade. Jikitijushiro hummed the words of liberation, and raised his left sword with the zanpakutō Pisces in his hand. The invisible suction force exploded around and covered a large area in front of him. In an instant, the falling spirit arrows seemed to fall into an invisible funnel, frantically converging towards the zanpakutō Pisces raised by Jikitijushiro and being absorbed into it. After a moment, the large number of spirit arrows had been completely absorbed by Jikitijushiro, and replaced by the 5 signs of zanpakutō Pisces on the ropes connected to each other behind Jikitijushiro. However, just when Jikitijushiro was about to turn the large amount of spirit arrows he absorbed into another form of energy and release it back, not only Senju Cheng, who was originally in the distance, had disappeared, but even Seireitei had disappeared. In desperation, Jikitijushiro pointed the zanpakutō Pisces, in his right hand, toward the sky. A beam of energy that was even more exaggerated than the flash released by Haribal almost turned into a beam of light that penetrated the sky and earth in the 4th Division's barracks. At this moment, Senju Cheng, who had retreated to the edge of the 4th Division's barracks with Seireitei, turned his head and looked at the beam of light rising into the sky behind him. His expression slightly changed. The ability revealed by Jikitijushiro was no longer just an ordinary zanpakutō ability. Through the process of the absorption and conversion of the spirit particles, Senju Cheng sensed a kind of ability that was vaguely at the same level as himself and Hyoshuba Wichibane. This made Senju Cheng, who was originally preparing to leave directly, feel a little hesitant. In this moment of hesitation, Shunsui, with a stern look, had already chased after him from behind, and an invisible spiritual pressure emitted by the zanpakutō, gynecology, enveloped Senju Cheng, and it seemed to have changed some rules. Shunsui, who was chasing after him, jumped up high, and slashed at Senju with a seemingly flawed move, tempting Senju to counterattack. However, Senju grabbed the straps on the already seriously injured Seireitei and threw it to the back, and then took a small step back to dodge the attack, and then continued to head outside the 4th Division's barracks. Bang! The zanpakutō, gynecology, fell to the ground, instantly cutting out 2 intersecting grooves. Shunsui continued to chase Senju and Seireitei like a piece of taffy. Don't try to run, Kurosaki. However, Makoto Senju seemed to have a great impact on his speed when he was carrying Ishirai, and he had no way to completely get rid of Kokushansui behind him. Seeing this, Ishirai gritted his teeth and spoke in a deep voice. "Uncle Kurosaki, let me go." Makoto Senju, whose expression had not changed at all, dodged the attack of Bushinju from behind again, smiled gently at Ryoshida, and asked, "Rai, have you lost confidence in me?" No, Ryoshida answered subconsciously. "Then leave everything to me," Makoto Senju said with a smile. "Protecting disciples is the romance of a teacher." As soon as these words came out, Ryoshida's face flushed with excitement. He was recognized. Uncle Kurosaki accepted for the first time that he was his disciple. However, seeing this, Shunsui Kriku, who had been chasing Makoto Senju all the way, suddenly increased his speed. When he got close to Makoto Senju, he slashed the shadow under Makoto Senju with his zanpakutō, and said, "You don't think you can really escape, do you?" However, what surprised Shunsui Kriku was that this attack missed. The rule called Shadow Ghost was activated. In theory, the moment the attack touched the shadow, it could launch a zero-distance attack on the enemy. Missed. Kokushansui's eyes slowly turned, looking at Senju Makoto, who stopped 20 meters away, and said in a serious tone, "It's not an illusion. In addition to the brand ghost at the beginning, even the shadow ghost can be avoided. You know my zanpakutō's ability very well, Kurosaki Makoto." Chapter 452-5. "I'm curious, where did you get the information?" Kokushansui asked in a slightly serious and playful tone. As the captain of the 8th Division of the Intelligence Division, Kokushansui has always been particularly careful to hide his zanpakutō abilities, and the number of times he has released his zanpakutō in the past 100 years is even more rare. With the age of the Queen Sea in front of him, Kurosaki Makoto, it is impossible for him to know the ability of his zanpakutō. All kinds of speculations and doubts emerged in Kokushansui's mind almost instantly. In response, Senju Makoto remained silent, and his eyes turned and fell on Yukitsujushiro, who followed and stood beside Kokushansui. Compared with Kokushansui, whose abilities seem to be quite strange, and whose only Shikai can create many strange rules to force Senju Makoto to execute, Senju Makoto pays more attention to Yukitsujushiro, whose zanpakutō ability seems to be simply absorbing and releasing. Facing Senju Makoto's gaze, Yukitsujushiro looked at the friend in front of him who had communicated with him through letters for several years, and slowly spoke. "Mr. Kurosaki Makoto, I used to think that although you were a Queen Sea, what you learn for and uphold is the path of peace. Why do you have to go to such lengths? Not only did you attack Soul Society as a traveling disaster, you also killed Captain Aizen and attacked many captains in succession." Senju Makoto blocked the seriously injured Ishirai behind him, and said in a helpless and aggrieved tone that was so real that it was indistinguishable from the real thing. "If I say that most of this has nothing to do with me, will you believe it?" "Oh, I believe it." The reactions shown by Kokushansui and Yukitsujushiro are completely different. Moreover, after Yukitsujushiro spoke, Kokushansui, who was more like the leader between the two, let Yukitsujushiro continue to speak. "I also have considerable doubt about everything that has happened in the Seireitei recently, so if Mr. Kurosaki Makoto believes me, I am willing to cooperate with Mr. Kurosaki Makoto to reinvestigate." Senju Makoto asked with a little emotion. "Captain Yukitsuke, do you trust me so much?" "I not only trust Mr. Kurosaki Makoto's character, but I also trust my own judgment of various clues," Yukitsujushiro said in a deep and sincere tone. "I suspect that someone is deliberately using Mr. Kurosaki Makoto and others to disturb the Seireitei," Senju Makoto said with a touch of emotion in his eyes. "Captain Yukitsuke, thank you for your trust. It's just that in today's Soul Society, I don't dare to trust anyone, and I don't dare to believe everything I see. I will find out the truth myself, but please believe me, Captain Yukitsuke, I have no ill will towards the Soul Society." Hearing this, Yukitsujushiro frowned slightly, as if he was lost in thought, and stopped talking. Instead, it was Kokushansui who spoke with a more dissatisfied tone. "Kurosaki Makoto, are you under any illusion? Seireitei is not a place where you are allowed to make a fuss at will, not to mention that with all the evil deeds you have committed, we can no longer tolerate you leaving here." In an instant, the atmosphere of the scene suddenly became solemn and murderous. Senju Makoto gave Ishirai a step-back look, and spoke with a helpless and resolute tone. "In that case, then let me teach you a lesson." Seeing this, Ishirai almost subconsciously expressed his opposition and spoke. "Wait, Uncle Kurosaki, I want to fight too." Rai, such an opponent is a little too worldly for you. Senju Cheng pushed Ishidarai behind him without saying anything, and spoke. You staying here will only hinder me and involve my energy, so, step back. These caring and cruel words completely penetrated Ishidarai's heart, making Ishidarai clench his fists tightly. Weak, I am still too weak. Ishidarai retreated quickly with tears in his eyes, and his heart was once again filled with a desire for strength. At this moment, Senju Cheng formed an ancient spirit bow in his hand, and faced Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, who had already released the Shy Guy. As the veteran captains in the entire Seireitei, second only to Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni and Unohana Retsu, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro have stood in the Seireitei for nearly 1,000 years. Bang! Suddenly, Kakushansui took the lead in launching an attack, and the whole person appeared above Senju Cheng in the blink of an eye, and the zanpakutō in his hand slashed down at Senju Cheng. Rule. The higher the Zanki, the winner. Information about Kakushansui emerged in Senju Cheng's mind, and he was keenly aware of the changes in certain rules around him with the ability of spiritual control. In this case, Kakushansui is at a higher altitude than Senju Cheng, which will increase the power of Kakushansui by an incredible amount. However, Kakushansui only felt a flash before his eyes, and the Senju Cheng who was originally below him had disappeared, and instead, a voice sounded above Kakushansui. Speed is height. Captain Kaku's instant step is a bit slow. Kakushansui only had time to raise his eyes, and what he saw was a fully drawn spirit bow, and it was aimed at Kakushansui's head. But Captain Kaku's ability is really creative. At the moment when the spirit arrow that seemed to be able to instantly penetrate Kakushansui was released, a golden energy torrent appeared at Senju Cheng's position as if it had been expected. Hadao 63 Thunder Ore Cannon. The number of this Hadao attack was not high, but the power was stuck in a certain sensitive place, enough for Senju Cheng to ignore the Thunder Ore Cannon and continue to attack Kakushansui. Immediately, the spirit arrow in Senju Cheng's hand turned and released towards the Hadao 63 Thunder Ore Cannon that was close at hand. The collision between the blue and golden colors, the spirit arrow almost paused for a moment, and instantly tore apart the Hadao 63 Thunder Ore Cannon prepared in advance by Kitijashiro. And at this time, Kakushansui's voice sounded with some amusement. Then, do you know that the higher the position a person stands on, the larger the range of the shadow will be? In an instant, Senju Cheng's eyes turned, and Kakushansui's footsteps stepped on the shadow of Senju Cheng reflected on the ground, and the zanpakutō Kinkotsu in his hand suddenly pierced into it. Rule. Shadow Ghost, the side whose shadow is stepped on loses. In an instant, at the moment when the zanpakutō Kinkotsu pierced into the shadow, a knife that seemed to be made of shadow suddenly appeared on Senju Cheng's body at the corresponding position of the shadow and pierced into Senju Cheng's body. Chapter 453. One person is thousands and tens of thousands. Puff. As a dull sound sounded, Senju Cheng's figure disappeared almost instantly, and he distanced himself from Kakushansui. However, the white coat that seemed to be unstained by dust was now covered by his left hand with a blood-red patch. It seems that you are still careless, Kurosaki Makatao. Seeing this, Kakushansui said with a little pride, as if he was a child who had gained an advantage by using the rules of the game. In response, Senju Cheng's expression seemed to be a little solemn. As expected, he is the disciple of the rumored Captain General Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. Not only is his zanpakutō ability, but the cooperation between the two sides is also perfect, right? This sentence is undoubtedly Senju Cheng's praise and recognition for Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro. Unlike other captains, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro's spiritual pressure is 1 or 2 levels stronger than most captains, and more importantly, they rarely use their brains in battle. Moreover, in the simple confrontation just now, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro revealed a rather amazing tacit understanding. Through Brand Ghost to lure Senju Cheng to gain a higher position, and then through Jikitijashiro's prepared Ghost Way to temporarily contain Senju Cheng. The killer move is to use the large area of shadow left on the ground by Senju Cheng to launch Shadow Ghost. This small cooperation launched through unspoken tacit understanding is almost enough to kill the captain of the level of Rogue Guru Makensei in a second in Senju Cheng's judgment. As a reward, I will create a corresponding wound on my body to show my praise, Senju Cheng thought while putting down his left hand that seemed to be pressing the wound to prevent excessive bleeding. After all, with the current strength of Senju Cheng's ultimate spirit body, it is not a mere shadow ghost attack that can break through. So, are you ready to surrender? Kakushansui said with confidence and arrogance. Senju Cheng smiled and said, Captain Kaku, you seem a little proud. I can't help it. I also want to keep a low profile, but it seems that my side is stronger. Kukushansui said. Whether it is close combat or long-range attacks that your queens are best at, it is meaningless to us. Defeat is a foregone conclusion. The reason why I allowed you to escape to this position is simply because I don't want the aftermath of the battle to destroy the 4th Division's barracks. Thank you very much, Senju Cheng said, and then pulled the spirit bow again, instantly releasing a rain of spirit arrows towards Kukushansui again. In response, Kukushansui seemed to have no intention of moving, and spoke lightly. I've already said that this kind of attack is meaningless in front of Yukitik's zanpakutō, and it will only make it easy for Yukitik to release a more powerful attack to counterattack. Just as Kukushansui finished speaking, Yukitik Jushiro's figure once again blocked Kukushansui's way. With a lift of the zanpakutō, Pisces, held in his left hand, a large amount of spirit arrow rain was quickly absorbed. As the 5 signs on the chain of Pisces gradually lit up, Yukitik Jushiro pointed the zanpakutō, Pisces, held in his right hand, at Senju Cheng. Boom. It seemed that the energy torrent that had gathered all the power of the spirit arrow rain and had undergone a special amplification surged towards Senju Cheng. Wherever the terrifying power passed, it seemed to instantly annihilate all obstacles. When the amazing aftermath gradually dissipated, in front of Yukitik Jushiro, there suddenly appeared a trace of a huge gully that seemed to have no end at a glance. As for Senju Cheng, he seemed to have dodged it with great difficulty and appeared in another direction. Staring at Senju Cheng, Kukushansui raised his right hand holding his zanpakutō to his shoulder and said with a playful tone. So, whether it is close combat or long-range combat, it is meaningless. Just surrender, Kurosaki Cheng. The tone contained a hint of provocation, as if the game rule maker was watching the players struggling within the rules of the game and deliberately provoking the other party to continue struggling and resisting. However, Senju Cheng smiled and said, Captain Kuku, you are worthy at being the captain of the Intelligence Division. From the beginning of contact until now, you have been unconsciously inducing and hinting to me through words. After these words came out, Kukushansui's expression froze slightly. Even, you deliberately didn't dodge or avoid Captain Yukitik's use of his zanpakutō ability. Your goal is probably to form a fixed idea in my mind through induction and suggestion, so that I will completely give up the spirit arrows that will only help your counterattack. So that I can fight with Captain Kuku in close combat, and further fall into Captain Kuku's weird zanpakutō ability rules, and be forced to deal with your tacit cooperation with each other. As Senju Cheng's voice fell, the faint smile on Kukushansui's face seemed to become more intense, and he said, Oh? Since you think so, why not try to continue to fight us with spirit arrows, but once you are restrained by me, you will be killed in an instant without being able to dodge the counterattack released by Yukitik, and I will be very distressed. Psychological tactics are useless. It is impossible for a serious queency to fight the enemy with close combat that they are not good at. Senju Cheng's smile on his face became more meaningful, and then he said, Since Captain Kuku and Captain Yukitik are so confident, let's try out my specially developed queency fighting method. The next moment, a large number of spirit particles seemed to be forcibly absorbed around Senju Cheng, and spirit bows were quickly formed behind Senju Cheng, tens, hundreds, thousands. By the time Kukushansui and Yukitik Jushiro reacted, a wall of countless spirit bows had appeared behind Senju Cheng, and the number of spirit bows was beyond the scope of accurate visual judgment in a short time. Senju Cheng crossed his arms across his chest, and the long voice reached the ears of Kukushansui and Yukitik Jushiro. Queency, after countless hardships, you have lost your former glory. The few remaining ones in the world represent your decline. Perhaps, I alone cannot revive the glory of the queency, nor can I reproduce the once huge group of queency. But I alone can unleash the spirit arrow rain of thousands or tens of thousands at queency. If you have the courage, then try to bear the endless spirit arrow rain of the glory of the queency head on. Chapter 454. Bankai and Kaiten Kinkotsu. In the heart of Kuromatsu, this extremely shocking scene was reflected in the eyes of Ishirai standing at the edge of the battlefield. He felt the hot blood in his heart surging constantly. What kind of talent and what kind of gift is this? The spirit particles were being absorbed, and were controlled by Uncle Kurosaki to transform into spirit bows of different shapes. These spirit bows were so familiar and strange to Ishirai. They were all recorded in the classics of the Ishida family and the Kurosaki family. Countless spirit bows that had been used by other queencies. Each spirit bow represented a history of different queencies, and the amplification and effect of each spirit bow are also different, and now, one person is 1,000, that is, 10,000. The countless spirit bows formed and pulled behind Makao Senju as if the glory and splendor of the queensies that had been buried in history had revived again. At this moment, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, who were standing in front of Senju Makao, had expressions that were visibly ugly. The spirit bow that seemed to have no end at a glance, just by pulling it open, had already produced an invisible huge pressure. Is this guy going to become the last glorious legend born in a group of queensies that is about to be extinct? Is this a queency ability that has not been recorded in the great spiritual book corridor? A self-created fighting method. And this exaggerated scene, not only the two captains present, but even half of the Seireitei could directly see the countless open spirit bows with their eyes. What is that? Spiritual no? And the spiritual pressure in that direction is Captain Kuku and Captain Yukituk. It seems something is wrong. Many of the captains around felt something was wrong, and instinctively gathered in the direction of Senju Makao. However, Senju Makao, with his arms folded across his chest and his white windbreaker fluttering in the wind, did not hesitate at all and spoke lightly. Endless rain of spirit arrows. Instantly, the drawn spirit bows flashed brilliant light almost synchronously, and the surrounding spirits were forcibly absorbed in large quantities, visible to the naked eye. The next moment, it was as if the sky had burst its banks, and an endless torrent of blue spirit arrows fell towards Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro. Back off. Jikitijashiro pulled Kakushansui behind him with an unprecedented solemn expression, and raised his zanpakutō, Paisosori. Suddenly, Paisosori's seemingly unreasonable ability reappeared, and the air in front of the sword tip seemed to form a funnel-shaped vortex that could swallow everything, madly absorbing spirit arrows that approached a certain range. Almost in just a breath, the 5 signs on the chain connecting the 2 handles of zanpakutō, Paisosori, lit up at the same time. Based on the information revealed by Jikitijashiro in the previous battle, the lighting at the 5 signs undoubtedly meant that Jikitijashiro could release the energy he attracted again. Senju Makao's expression did not change at all. The countless spirit bows behind him was still releasing spirit arrows crazily, making the blue spirit arrow rain torrent in the jingling court even more turbulent. Boom boom, it was clearly just a torrent formed by spirit arrows, but it made a surging sound like a river bursting its banks and constantly echoing in the air. The number of spirit arrow rain absorbed by Jikitijashiro's zanpakutō, Pisces, also increased exponentially. The 5 lit signs were already as bright as a small sun. Struggling. Jikitijashiro's face could not help but show a look of struggle, and his already pale face looked even paler, and his body shook unconsciously. Yukituk. Seeing this scene, Kakushansui shouted almost instinctively, knowing that even for Jikitijashiro, absorbing such a huge amount of energy at one time was almost at its limit. The important thing is that Jikitijashiro's body simply cannot fight for a long time. We can't go on like this. Endless rain of spirit arrows. Can this bastard really keep up such a terrifying intensity of attack? Damn it. We must find a way to make Yukitid release the absorbed energy first, otherwise, it will be bad. Kakushansui's face clearly showed urgency, and his eyes passed through the overwhelming rain of spirit arrows and looked at Senju Makao who was crossing his chest. However, the various game rules that Kakushansui could formulate in the state of Shikai were simply not effective in reversing the situation. It seems that there is no way. Yukituk, Kakushansui, who was standing behind Jikitijashiro, threw the bamboo hat and Captain Zadori he was wearing behind him and spoke. I can't be protected by you like this. I have to do something. Jikitijashiro, who was struggling to maintain his position, suddenly thought of something and spoke quickly. Wait, Shansui, are you planning to use your bankai? There's nothing we can do about it. A solemn expression appeared on Shansui Komraku's face, and he disappeared from the spot in a flash. Under the somewhat astonished gaze of Senju Makao, he passed Jikitijashiro and crashed into the torrent of spirit arrow rain. Puff, puff, almost in an instant, more than 10 spirit arrows pierced through Shansui Komraku's body, and blood splattered. Harasui. Seeing this, Jikitijashiro took a few steps forward under the pressure, protecting Shansui Komraku who seemed to be about to be torn apart by the endless spirit arrow rain. In less than a breath, Shansui Komraku was already covered in blood and seriously injured. However, the spiritual pressure on Shansui Komraku became more and more terrifying, and his blood-red hands directly inserted the 2 zanpakutō into the ground. Wow. Leave it to me next, Yukituk. Kakushansui slowly raised his head, staring at Senju Makao with sharp eyes, and said, Bankai, Kaiten Kinkotsu. Kurumitsu Heart. In an instant, a female black shadow made of an unknown substance appeared from behind Kukushansui, and then several black pine trees and pine leaves extended from the double swords inserted into the ground, and, as if it was an illusion, with Kukushansui as the center, the scenery within a large area around him seemed to become dim, and at the same time, a large-scale spiritual pressure that made people feel instinctively shivered was released from Kukushansui. At this moment, when Senju Cheng, who was holding his arms across his chest, slightly focused his eyes, some rules existing in the range of Kukushansui's spiritual pressure seemed to have changed again. The voice of Seireitei was also quietly transmitted to Senju Cheng's ears through the direction of the spiritual vibration. Master Senju, be careful. The information about Kukushansui's zanpakutō Bankai ability has been deliberately erased from the entire records of the Seireitei. In addition, Kukushansui has never used his Bankai ability in the past few hundred years. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 455. Hesitation and trauma sharing. The reminder from Seireitei made Makoto Senju raise his eyebrows slightly. This scene undoubtedly surprised Makoto Senju a little. In the terrible pair of Kukushansui and Yukitijushiro, Kukushansui is undoubtedly good at close combat, while Yukitijushiro is better at long-range combat. Therefore, Makoto Senju forcefully used spiritual control to fake the spiritual absorption ability of the Queency, showing this endless rain of spirit arrows that almost exceeded the theoretical limit of the Queency's ability. The purpose is to suppress Kukushansui's effect to the minimum, and then force Yukitijushiro to use Bankai, which also does not exist in the known information. After all, Yukitijushiro's zanpakutō, Pisces, may be very strong, but absorption and release cannot be used dynamically at the same time, and Yukitijushiro must also have a maximum threshold for absorption. Would Kukushansui rather release his Bankai in such a costly way than let Yukitijushiro release it? As the thought in Senju Makoto's mind slightly moved, his eyes condensed, and suddenly more than 10 spirit arrows appeared on his body strangely, piercing through the wound, instantly dyeing most of the white wind and rain on Senju Makoto's body red. Pain. After who knows how many years, Senju Makoto felt pain again due to the enemy's attack. This unexpected and abrupt feeling made the endless spirit arrow rain maintained by Senju Makoto pause for a moment. It was also at this moment that Yukitijushiro, who was almost at the load limit, seized the opportunity, counterattack. However, Yukitijushiro did not dare to release this attack in the direction of Senju Makoto, for fear that the consequence of this attack would be to completely wipe out a small part of the Jingling Tang. Therefore, Yukitijushiro raised the zanpakutō in his right hand and pointed it directly at the sky. Boom! A thick blue light column like a pillar of heaven rose into the sky and crashed into the soul-blocking membrane that could theoretically block attacks such as spirit particles and spiritual pressure. Crack, crack. However, under the release of the energy threshold that almost exceeded the limit that Yukitijushiro could bear, the soul-blocking membrane was instantly blasted with a big hole, and the blue light column truly penetrated the heaven and earth of Soul Society. And the blue light column that penetrated the sky and the earth lasted for several breaths, and then gradually disappeared, leaving a big hole in the sky above the Seireitei. For the entire Seireitei, this scene also made a large number of Shinigami who witnessed it stagnate on the spot. The soul-blocking membrane was pierced. This also made Seireitei, who was waiting for this opportunity, happy in his heart. He did not hesitate to take the opportunity of the connection between the spirit particles of Seireitei and Cheng-ge to directly get rid of the shackles of the fused spirit particles being limited to the interior of Seireitei. Master Senju, is this the opportunity I need to wait for? Senju Makoto did not respond to Seireitei, but nodded faintly, and his eyes fell on Kukushansui. The sudden injuries on his body, even ignoring the defense of the ultimate spirit body, were exactly the same as the places where Kukushansui was pierced by the endless rain of spirit arrows. Are you surprised? Kurosaki Makoto, Kukushansui slowly raised his head and said with a slight smile on his lips. This is the first stage of the ability of my Bankai Hanaken Kimbon Kuramatsu Shinzen. Hesitation trauma sharing, which will allow the injuries on the body of the creator of the Bankai to be shared synchronously. With the extent of my injuries, I'm afraid you will also lose your ability to move instantly like me, right? The winner is decided, Kurosaki Makoto. Senju Makoto's eyes looked at Yukitijushiro again, whose face was so pale that he seemed to fall down at any time, and said with some disapproval. Really? But people's physiques can't be generalized. It's just you who lost the ability to move, not me. After saying that, under Kukushansui's extremely surprised eyes, Senju Cheng, who should have been as seriously injured as himself, with more than 10 piercing wounds and unable to even stand up, turned around and threw away his blood-stained white windbreaker, and disappeared in a flash. Damn, seeing this, Kukushansui sensed that Senju Cheng was about to leave the range of his Bankai Hanaten Kyokotsu, Kurumatsu Shinzen, and instinctively wanted to get up and close the distance with Senju Cheng, and then activate the next effect of the ability to completely disintegrate Senju Cheng's ability to move. Zzz. However, Kukushansui only moved a little, and the whole person seemed to be a water-filled balloon with more than 10 holes pierced, and blood spurted out like a column, and the whole person sat back in place again powerlessly. This scene frightened Jashiro, whose pale face looked even uglier. He quickly stepped forward to hold down Kukushansui and said, "Shansui, forget it. If you continue like this, you'll die of excessive blood loss. No, Yukituk, this is a plan we have been preparing for so long. It is rare to really kill Kurosaki Makao." Suddenly, Kukushansui paused and looked down at a place on his abdomen. Seeing Kukushansui's strange reaction, Jashiro asked, "What's wrong, Shansui?" "Not right." "Kukushansui. What's wrong?" Kukushansui slowly raised his head and said with a frown, "The injuries I caused to Kurosaki Makao through the power of the Shadow Ghost were not synchronized to my body." After this, Jashiro was also stunned. After all, perhaps the other captains did not know, but how could Jashiro not know the ability of his close friend zanpakutō? Whether it is Shikai or Bankai, the effect of Kukushansui's zanpakutō is 2A. Jashiro frowned and said in a deep voice, "Then it seems that there is only one possibility, his wound is fake." As soon as this was said, Kukushansui and Jashiro's faces were gloomy. The meaning of this is that the battle that took place was always under the control of Kurosaki Makao, and he was even deliberately guiding the direction of the entire battle. What Kukushansui and Jashiro didn't know was that their conversation was almost simultaneously told to Senju Makao by Zaraki Saoya. TSK, he is worthy at being the real powerful captain of the Seireitei. Not only is his combat power terrifying, but his heart can also be so sharp, Senju Makao silently praised. However, after learning about the ability of Kukushansui's zanpakutō Bankai, Senju Makao knew that the fake wound he created would most likely not be hidden from Kukushansui. Fortunately, this was just an insignificant detail, and the discovery made by Kukushansui and Jashiro was not enough to affect the plan prepared by Senju Makao. Chapter 456. So fast? Go ahead, just keep monitoring. Another plan is important. Senju Makao said. Zaraki Saoya responded, and his main consciousness quickly went to Rukonge outside Soul Society, and through the ability of Spirit Phantom, he quickly expanded the range of fusion spirit particles. Ishirai heard the abrupt voice of Senju Makao beside him, and thought he was talking to him, and asked in confusion. "Ah? Uncle Kurosaki, what did you say?" Senju Makao did not explain more, and simply perfunctorily passed it over, and used the ability of spirit particle control to form a ghost barrier to cover his and Ishirai's tracks. Soon, Senju Makao took Ishirai to the entrance of the underground space where Seireitei was placed not long ago. Just when Ishirai was full of doubts and wanted to ask Senju Makao, he suddenly found a familiar figure lying at the entrance of the underground space. Kurosaki-san. Ishirai quickly stepped forward to check on Ichigo Kurosaki, who was still unconscious on the ground, and asked in confusion. "Uncle Kurosaki, when did you rescue Kurosaki-san? What about Inoue-san? Has he been rescued as well?" "Orihime is still in the 4th Division, but don't worry, she is not in any danger now. Let's talk about the rest later." Senju Makao signaled Ishirai to carry Ichigo Kurosaki on his back, and then took them into this hidden underground space. Soon, a space that was almost similar to the huge underground space under the Urahara grocery store appeared in Ishirai's eyes. In the underground space, the ghost barrier that was previously arranged by Senju Makao was still there, and the trapped Seireitei stared at Senju Makao with a cold face. "I'm back." In response to this, under Ishirai's somewhat strange expression, Senju Makao said to his wife as if he was a husband who had just returned home. Facing Senju Makao's tone that seemed to reveal intimacy, Seireitei's face did not ease at all. As soon as her eyes turned, she noticed the more than 10 exaggerated piercing wounds on Senju Makao's body. "It seems that you were almost killed." Seireitei said with a tone of gloating and venom. There is no way. After all, we're facing two veteran captains, Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, at the same time. They are different from the three tricks of many new captains. Senju Cheng was naturally not angry at this, but responded with interest. However, to Seireitei, this sentence undoubtedly sounded more like Senju Cheng mocking Seireitei's weakness, so Seireitei's expression became a little more gloomy. However, before Seireitei could sarcastically return the irony, Senju Cheng walked into the ghost barrier and directly in front of Seireitei. Senju Cheng took off the white windbreaker and shirt that were stained with blood and stuck to his body uncomfortably, revealing the perfect body lines and muscle arcs. Seireitei seemed to think of something, subconsciously took a step back, covered her chest with both hands, and shouted in shock and anger. "You, what are you doing?" However, facing Seireitei's questioning, Senju Cheng went forward without saying anything and grabbed Seireitei's hands, then hugged Seireitei's waist and picked her up. Seireitei, who has not yet gotten rid of the side effects of Bankai Sparrowbee Thunder Whip, has only recovered some mobility, and her spiritual pressure has hardly recovered at all. Although she instinctively resisted and tried to break free, it was obviously ineffective, and this scene, which seemed to be inappropriate for young people, made Seireitei, who was carrying Kurosaki Ichigo, stare with wide eyes, and was greatly shocked in his heart. Uncle Kurosaki, who has always been gentle and elegant, could it be? Possibly. No way. Then, under Seireitei's stunned gaze, Senju Cheng just walked into the wooden house not far away with Seireitei in his arms. Seireitei. Just when Seireitei's mind unconsciously sprouted all kinds of scenes of fighting for 900 rounds, 7 ins and 7 outs, and the earth shaking. In less than a few seconds, Senju Cheng came out of the wooden house. "Ah? This, so fast?" Seireitei said subconsciously. "What do you mean so fast?" Senju Cheng was stunned, and then his expression darkened. "Rai, what are you thinking about?" The reason why Senju Cheng forced Seireitei was that he was too lazy to explain too much to Seireitei, who was now on the wrong side of the issue, and was going to let Seireitei and Kurosaki Ichigo recover from their injuries through the healing hot springs. However, it was not appropriate for Seireitei to witness a man soaking in a hot spring, so he forced Seireitei to be locked up first. Then, Senju Cheng picked up Seireitei and Kurosaki Ichigo, stripped them of their clothes, and threw them directly into the hot spring, and then he also soaked in the hot spring for treatment. Of course, with the strength of the ultimate spirit body, the effect of this healing hot spring could not have much effect on Senju Cheng. However, Senju needs to use the healing hot spring as a cover to recover from his injuries, and also secretly treat the injuries of Seireitei and Kurosaki Ichigo. After all, time is still quite urgent. At the same time, after the Gotti 13 once again completely lost the trace of Makatao Senju and Seireitei, and belatedly discovered the unconscious Izaneo, Yamada Hanatao and the disappeared Kurosaki Ichigo. The captain's meeting was held. Under a series of gaffes, the captain-in-chief Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni convened an emergency captain's meeting. However, compared with the last captain's meeting, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni looked at the captains participating in the captain's meeting, and anger flashed in his slightly opened eyes. Captain Seireitei of the 2nd Division is missing and her fate is unknown. Captain Sosafrazen of the 5th Division is dead. In addition, Captain Shunsui Ikuku of the 8th Division, Chihiro Hitsugaya of the 10th Division, Kimpuchi Zaraki of the 11th Division, Mayuri Kurosachi of the 12th Division, and Joshiro Yukitiku of the 13th Division are all injured and attending the meeting. In the eyes of Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni, this scene is almost like a group of defeated soldiers. Out of control. What kind of out of control is this? It's just a disaster. One captain died, one captain is missing, more than 5 captains are injured, a large number of buildings in the Seireitei collapsed, and the soul shielding membranes were damaged. Bang! At this point, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni could no longer hold back and knocked his cane hard, shouting angrily. Is the Gotti 13 Division that I created so incompetent? The strong rebuke contained in these words made most of the captains present lower their heads with shame on their faces. Chapter 457. Mole Castle and Aizen. At this moment, almost no one dared to look directly into the fierce and majestic eyes of Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni. Failure. There is no doubt that since the invasion of the trip to the present, all the reactions made by the 13th Division of the Gotti can only be described as failures. Can you give me an explanation? Why did you fail so badly? The majesty contained in the voice of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni made the entire captain's meeting room seem to be shrouded in a terrifying low-pressure environment. New and young captains like Hitsuge Yatsuru almost couldn't help swallowing their saliva in fear and dared not say a word. Or it could be said that it was not just Hitsuge Yatsuru, but the other captains also had no way to answer this question. It can be said that since the trip to the present, the actions of the 13th Division of the GOTY seem to be completely led by the other side. Finally, after a period of silence, Kakushansui, who was almost covered with bandages, stood up and answered. Captain-in-Chief, we have indeed made indisputable mistakes and omissions. After Captain Aizen's death, we have focused too much attention on Kurosaki Makoto, who was hiding in the dark, and neglected to arrest the other 3 travelers in time. In addition, Kurosaki Makoto seems to be fully aware of the entire operation of the GOTY 13, and has caused us to lose the whereabouts of Ishidori and other travelers in a short period of time many times. In addition, Kurosaki Ichigo, who should have been unconscious, disappeared for no reason. I have to suspect that Kurosaki Makoto has an assistant, and it is very likely that it is one of the captains present. As soon as these words came out, the faces of the captains in the entire captain's meeting room changed, and they couldn't help but speak out. How is it possible? Captain Kirku, please be careful. Who is it? How dare you do such a rebellious thing? If there is anyone who has a personal relationship with Kurosaki Makoto, it must be, as Ichimura Jin, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said something. Many captains' eyes fell on Unohana Retsu, Komamura Sejin and Jikita Joshiro. In the past, Senju Makoto had been exchanging letters with these 3 captains, which was not a secret in the Seireitei. However, Unohana Retsu, Komamura Sejin, and Jikita Joshiro were undoubtedly captains with high prestige in the GOTY 13, and it was almost impossible for them to do such things in their inherent impression. Quiet. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni shouted and scolded. Are you going to lose your composure again and again? Are you going to engage in such inappropriate mutual suspicion based on some groundless speculation? At this moment, the door of the captain's meeting room was gently knocked, and a messenger angel quickly entered after being allowed, and said in a deep voice. In compliance with the order of the Central 46th Chamber, in view of the recent chaos in the Seireitei and the failure of the traveling troubles to be quelled quickly, in order to put an end to the traveling troubles' idea of kidnapping Rukia Kachiki as soon as possible, the 40 sages and the 6 great judges have agreed to advance the death sentence imposed on Rukia Kachiki to tomorrow at noon at the Double Killing Hill. In an instant, as the order was completed, the captains of the 13th Court Guard Division had different expressions. Unohana Retsu's gentleness, Kachiki Byakuya's coldness, Kakushansui's doubts, Jikita Joshiro's anxiety, I already know. As Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni agreed to this order issued by the Central 46th Chamber on behalf of the 13th Court Guard Division, his eyes quietly took in the expressions of the captains present. Since this is the order from the Central 46th Office, then follow the order and execute Rukia Kachiki at the Double Killing Hill tomorrow. Captains, please be present to prevent the final attack and madness of the brigade. After saying this, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni directly announced the end of the captains' meeting, and the other captains also left the first squadron quickly with their own thoughts. Among them, when Tosen Kaname was passing a corner with his vice-captain Hisaji, the captain's hand hidden in the feathered ornament secretly crushed something, and a message was transmitted to a certain underground place in Rukongeda with a special wave through the obstruction of the murderous stone. Until, the spherical instrument that received this special wave sounded several sounds with special frequencies, and a broad white hand picked up the spherical instrument. In this slightly dark underground laboratory, with the faint light of the spherical instrument, the owner of the hand was Aizen Sosok, who looked gentle and generous. However, at this moment, Aizen Sosok slightly lowered his head and looked at the spherical instrument in his hand, but he didn't know what he was thinking, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Behind Aizen Sosok were a large number of screens monitoring the images of various places in the Seireitei. Kurosaki Makoto Aizen Sosok muttered, but under the faint light, the refraction of the lens made it impossible to see his eyes clearly. Suddenly, Aizen Sosok's palm hidden in the captain's Aori sleeve suddenly burst into a dazzling bright yellow thunder and spread wildly towards the back. Hado 63. Thunder or cannon crackle. In an instant, this dark laboratory almost turned into a secret room with countless thunders raging. It was obviously the Hado that Aizen Sosok had given up chanting, but the power released was much greater than the power that Jikita Joshiro had prepared for a moment not long ago. At the end of the rampage of Hado no. 63. Thunder or cannon, the delicate-looking Zaraki Sao emerged. Bound no. 81. Dankong. As Seireitei said this calmly, an invisible wall suddenly appeared in front of him, as if separating the space on both sides. Boom. Hadono. 63. Thunder or cannon hit the invisible wall, and a large number of arcs raged wildly in all directions, but it did not have any effect on Seireitei standing behind it. Until the power of thunder or cannon completely disappeared in the air, Aiden Sosok turned around and looked at the uninvited guest who appeared silently in front of him in this secret laboratory. Giving up chanting to release Dankong. It can still exert about 1/5 of the defensive power, a good level of kitten. Aiden Sosok said with a tone of praise. It seems that Seireitei doesn't care about Aiden Sosok's praise at all. He walked up to Aiden Sosok calmly and said, Aiden Sosok, I finally found you. Why don't you introduce yourself first? Aiden Sosok said. Shouldn't you have investigated it a long time ago? Seireitei asked back. Of course, the former captain of the 11th Division, Kinpachi Seireitei, real name, Seireitei, is also a person who once became Makoto-kun's collaborator for unknown reasons. Aiden Sosok listed everything in detail, and then said. Then, since you escaped from the hell, why don't you introduce the purpose of appearing here? Chapter 458 Cheng-ge's Will and Hatred Cooperation. The answer of Seireitei was still so simple and calm, but it made Aiden Sosok's expression slightly change. Cooperation? Aiden Sosok looked at Seireitei who seemed to have no emotion in front of him and said. Interesting, is this why you came to me on purpose? So, you also know what my goal is? I don't know, but I know you will agree. Seireitei answered concisely and calmly, which made Aiden Sosok's eyebrows slightly raised and said. Where does your confidence come from? This makes me curious. Seireitei raised his eyes slightly, looked at Aiden Sosok's glasses that reflected the light, and answered. In recent decades, you have used the ability of mirror flowers and water moons to sneak into the 4th Division countless times to visit Master Senju. It shouldn't be out of hatred, right? In an instant, Aiden Sosok, who originally had a slight smile on his face, changed his expression, and the smile slowly withdrew, and asked back. What do you mean? Do you rely on this for cooperation? Is your purpose related to Makoto? That's right. Seireitei stared at the most unpredictable man in the entire jungling court, and he was unconsciously hesitant, nervous and other emotions. But Seireitei separated these emotions through the rain and dew in a flash, in order to maintain his absolute rationality and avoid being observed by Aiden Sosok through micro-expressions. In the past, Aiden Sosok's attitude towards Senju Makoto was undoubtedly quite strange and complicated. On the one hand, Aiden Sosok seemed to have never done anything to directly hurt or attack Senju Makoto. On the other hand, Aiden Sosok did not take Senju Makoto under his command as a trustworthy person. Friend. Deliberately cultivated enemy. Or some kind of sample for observation experiment. However, one thing that both Senju Makoto and Seireitei can be sure of is that the identity of Senju Makoto is a special existence in Aiden Sosok's heart. Therefore, my purpose is to help Senju-sama take revenge. Seireitei said as if he was stating a fact. Revenge. As soon as the word came out, the spherical instrument in Aiden Sosok's hand was instantly crushed. In the bursts of fire, Aiden Sosok's voice seemed to be a little lower, and he said. Is there something about Makoto's death that I don't know about? Yes. Seireitei nodded and said. You are also very clear about my ability. 99% of the things in the Seireitei can be hidden from me. It's just that in the past, due to the seal of the hell, I could only passively perceive but not interfere. However, not long ago, due to the battle between Ishirai and Kurosaki Mayuri, a part of the seal of the entrance to the hell was accidentally destroyed, allowing me to escape from the hell smoothly. After verification, I came to a conclusion about the truth of the death of Master Senju. Aiden Sosok did not speak, but just stared at Seireitei, but his whole body was unconsciously emitting a terrifying murderous intent. Master Senju's soul is likely to be secretly sealed by some special artifact held by the Four Nobles, and then taken to the Soul King Palace by the Zero Squad during the last arrival of the Zero Squad. When he said this, Seireitei paused, carefully organizing the words prepared by Makoto Senju in his mind, and spoke. As for the reason, before Seireitei could speak, Aiden Sosok suddenly raised his hand, interrupting Seireitei's words, and said slowly. As for the reason, perhaps I know it better than you. It should be that Makoto-kun exposed some kind of nature in the battle in Hukomundo. Zaraki Fuai was stunned when he said this. Originally, the words that Senju Cheng prepared for Zaraki Fuai were about Senju Cheng mastering the spirit body superposition technology that could destroy the balance between the Seireitei and Cheng-ge, so that the nobles and the Zero Squad could not tolerate Senju Cheng's existence. Unexpectedly, Aiden Sosok seemed to know something. However, Aiden Sosok, who had rarely lost his composure in the long period of hundreds of years under Zaraki Fuai's observation, now looked so ugly. It was not until a moment later that Aiden Sosok seemed to have completely digested the news told by Zaraki Fuai, and the look he gave Zaraki Fuai seemed to be a little more kind. That look was as if he was looking at the spokesperson of his best friend in the world. "Tell me, what is your plan?" "So, you agree to cooperate?" Zaraki Fuai asked quite unexpectedly. "It seems that Makao-kun didn't tell you everything." Aiden Sosok took a deep breath, and said with a flash of nostalgia in his eyes. "Makao-kun and I are the only best friends in Soul Society who can understand each other. Over the past few decades, I have been secretly exploring and confirming the cause of Makao-kun's death." Zaraki Fuai. At this moment, if it weren't for the rain and dew that was still separating all the emotions in Zaraki Fuai's heart, I'm afraid that Zaraki Fuai, who was not good at pretending his emotions, would have been confused. But, that's not what Lord Senju told me. In Lord Senju's mouth, you are just a dangerous existence that is extremely feared and difficult to distinguish between friend and foe. As for the relationship with Lord Senju, it's just because the dead are often the most trustworthy, so that Zaraki Fuai made him a character who stood on the opposite side of the Zero Squad and the noble class of the Seireitei in order to avenge Senju Cheng. However, Zaraki Fuai looked at the expression and tone of Aiden Sosok at this moment. Why did he seem to be more sad and hateful than himself? Aiden Sosok, is he acting, trying to pretend to be a close friend of Lord Senju, so as to further conquer me? Zaraki Fuai secretly guessed this possibility, and his face was still expressionless. "Mr. Cheng's will be inherited by me as a close friend," Aiden Sosok said slowly. "I will also be the one to carry Makao-kun's hatred and seek retribution from Soul Society. Just follow me and witness the scenery for Makao-kun." Zaraki became more and more certain of a certain guess in his heart. After all, considering Aiden Sosok's personality, this reaction was undoubtedly a bit excessive, almost like the only person he cherished was slaughtered by Soul Society. However, Zaraki did not question anything, but just followed the revenge character setting that Senju Cheng had set for him and stated, "I want to destroy the aristocracy of Soul Society first." Upon hearing this, Aiden Sosok's expression did not change at all, but he answered slowly, "Okay. P.S. I am having a serious writer's block today, so there are only 2 updates. Sorry." Chapter 459. Broken Bees Libra. Inside the Seireitei, in a secret underground space. Senju Cheng listened to the details reported by Zaraki Fuai, and doubts flashed in his eyes. Aiden Sosok agreed too readily to Zaraki Fuai's proposal for revenge. In a sense, Aiden Sosok seemed to be more eager than Zaraki Fuai. This reaction was either Aiden Sosok's attempt to further subdue Zaraki Fuai, who seemed determined to take revenge, or Aiden Sosok really, see me as a friend. As this possibility emerged in Senju Cheng's mind, Senju Cheng only felt that he was a little whimsical. In the past, Senju Cheng felt like a pleasant goat who had no ability to protect himself, and Aiden Sosok was a big bad wolf. Therefore, knowing in advance how terrifying Aiden Sosok was, and knowing how skilled Aiden Sosok was in playing with the feelings of those who admired him, Senju Cheng hardly considered the direction. Now, with the power he has mastered, the angle and position of Senju Cheng's consideration of things have changed, but this idea came to his mind as his first reaction. Let's wait and see if we end up on a similar path, Senju Cheng thought silently, and then he picked up Ishirai and Kurosaki Ichigo, who were both soaking in the healing hot spring and fell asleep due to exhaustion. "Wake up." Gentle Senju Cheng took the most effective way to wake them up, and gave each of them a big fight. "Papa." The crisp sound proved that Ishirai and Kurosaki Ichigo are not shameless children, and they opened their slightly confused eyes almost immediately. Then, Senju Cheng threw a set of clothes in front of each of them. Kurosaki Ichigo's death suit and Ishirai's overalls and shirt. In fact, Senju Cheng naturally wanted Ishirai's clothes to be a little less masculine, but the spare clothes in his huge bag were all these things. "Wake up, it's not time to rest yet, kids." In contrast, Senju Cheng's gentle voice spoke with some helplessness. "Kachika's execution time has been moved up, and we only have less than a day left. As soon as these words came out, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida, who was still a little confused, suddenly sat up with their eyes wide open. In response, Senju Makoto did not dodge them, letting them slowly digest the news, and turned to walk into the cabin on the other side. Soiloi Fong was in it, and was tied up with a hemp rope. With the appearance of Senju Makoto, Soiloi Fong's originally cold face almost visibly showed grief and anger. As the captain of the 2nd Division, due to the side effects of using Bankai Sparrow V Thunder Whip, he now has no strength to break free from the hemp rope and is restricted in this humiliating way. Due to the backlight, Soiloi Fong could not see the tenderness in Senju Makoto's eyes as he looked at her. Soiloi Fong, in a sense, she is too stubborn, and her Bankai is more twisted and more powerful than the original path. Therefore, Senju Makoto treated Soiloi Fong in such a rather rude way, in order to make Soiloi Fong deeply aware of the side effects of using Bankai Sparrow V Thunder Whip. Captain Soiloi Fong, then, Senju Makoto restrained the gentleness in his eyes and spoke as a hostile Quincy. Maybe you won't believe what I say now, but tomorrow is the day of Kachika Rukia's execution. No matter what the result is, you will be free again. Tomorrow? Soiloi Fong asked with some doubt. Yes, the time was suddenly advanced. After a pause, Senju Makoto did not explain too much, but spoke. Before that, I have an unwelcome request, and I hope you can agree to it. I refuse. Without waiting for Senju Makoto to speak, Soiloi Fong answered without hesitation. And Senju Makoto continued as if he had not heard it. I hope Captain Soiloi Fong can teach Ichigo Kurosaki about Shunpo. As one of the most accomplished people in the GOTY 13, you're undoubtedly the most suitable candidate. I said, I refuse. Soiloi Fong refused again. There is no doubt that with the aristocratic education that Soiloi Fong received since childhood, or the beliefs and principles she followed after joining the GOTY 13, Soiloi Fong had no reason to help him here. Are you sure? Senju Makoto stared at Soiloi Fong and said, I haven't told you the reward I can give. No matter what reward, I will never agree to it. Soiloi Fong replied in a cold tone. What if it is the voice of the vice captain of the 4th Division, Senju Makoto, that was saved? As this sentence sounded, Soiloi Fong's eyes widened and stared at a recorder that Senju Makoto took out from his arms. Then, Senju Makoto turned on the switch of the recorder, and a weak and somewhat vague voice belonging to Senju Makoto slowly sounded. Shijne and Seireitei and Koi and I want to go back, teacher and be waiting for me, and instantly, the blood on Soiloi B's face seemed to be drained away instantly, and tears could not stop flowing from her wide eyes. She stared blankly at the recorder in Senju Makoto's hand and turned into a tearful person, mumbling. Makoto, and it's Makoto-kun's voice, and of course, I can guarantee with my life that this is Senju Makoto's voice. Senju Makoto answered in a steady and affirmative tone. However, what Senju Makoto did not say was that this was the voice he had just tied Soiloi B up in the wooden house, and he found a time to record it himself, which can be said to be quite fresh and authentic. As long as you are willing to teach Ichigo Kurosaki how to use flash steps, I will give you the recorder in my hand. Otherwise, I can only destroy it. You dare? Almost the moment the word fell, Soiloi Fong's eyes looked at Senju Makoto with a strong murderous aura, as if she wanted to cut Senju Makoto into pieces. Senju Makoto raised his eyebrows and asked. So, you agree? In an instant, Soiloi Fong's expression changed, and the whole person fell into a deep tangle, and Senju Makoto couldn't help but feel a little nervous about the answer Soiloi Fong was about to make. Soiloi Fong's choice this time will determine Senju Makoto's series of arrangements for Soiloi Fong in the future. This seems to be just a simple transaction, helping Ichigo Kurosaki in exchange for Senju Makoto's related relics. But what will be reflected is Soiloi Fong's inner balance between Senju Makoto and Seireitei. Chapter 460. The only hope, compared to the Seireitei, is the cherished person Senju Makoto more important? Or is it more firm to stick to the belief at defending the Seireitei for a lost memory? There was a struggle in Soiloi Fong's eyes, as if a lot of memories kept coming to her mind. People's psychological defenses are often fragile and firm. A few breaths, dozens of breaths passed. Senju Makoto did not urge Soiloi Fong, and no matter what choice Soiloi Fong made, Senju Makoto would not be dissatisfied with Soiloi Fong at all. On the contrary, rationally speaking, even if he put himself in Soiloi Fong's shoes, Senju Makoto would not necessarily choose to betray his heart for hundreds of years for the relics left by Soiloi Fong. It's just, if Soiloi Fong chose himself, Senju Makoto would feel very happy and would respond to Soiloi Fong's heavy thoughts. Slowly, under Senju Makoto's gaze, Seireitei's eyes seemed to dim, and her clenched fist slowly loosened. It seems that you already have the answer in your heart. Senju Makoto asked. Yes, Seireitei said with tears still falling from her eyes. Makoto, he is the figure I have been pursuing and looking forward to all my life. He is so gentle and kind. He is like a ray of sunshine that illuminates me in the dark abyss and makes my life shine again. Senju Makoto opened his mouth slightly when he heard these words that were almost like a confession. In the past, Senju Makoto also understood that he was a very important and special existence to Seireitei, and he might even have become the perfect substitute for your Rishishirin in Seireitei's heart. However, this self-narration that contained despair, joy and longing at the same time still made Senju Makoto's heart throb. He is the most perfect god of death in the Seireitei. He is powerful but sympathizes with the weak. He has a high status but is humble and low-key. He died in the Huko Mundo at the cost of his life to protect his colleagues, and here, the Seireitei, is the place that Makoto-kun wants to defend with his life. How can I betray this place? Hearing this, Senju Makoto's eyes drooped slightly, and the whole person was somewhat silent. After a full moment, Senju Makoto spoke. I know, I understand your choice. However, just as Senju Makoto was about to turn around and leave the wooden house filled with a heavy atmosphere, Senju Makoto had just opened the door of the wooden house when Seireitei's voice suddenly rang again. Wait! Senju Makoto turned his head to look at Seireitei, only to see Seireitei slowly grinning and speaking word by word. Leave Makoto-kun's relics behind. I agree to your request. Huh. Senju Makoto was slightly confused, and felt that the emotions that had just been brewing in his heart were slightly chaotic, and asked. Didn't you say you wouldn't betray the Seireitei that Makoto Senju defended with his life? Seireitei said, still staring at the recorder in Makoto Senju's hand. So, between defending the place that Makoto-kun loves and protecting Makoto-kun's relics, which is more important? Do you still need to hesitate? Makoto Senju raised his eyebrows slightly and asked. Noble honor, captain's dignity, and the belief in protecting the Seireitei, don't you think about it? However, Seireitei's tone became more and more urgent. Don't talk nonsense, give me the recorder, and I will teach Ichigo Kurosaki how to use flash steps. Is this the content of the deal? Makoto Senju. At this moment, Makoto Senju suddenly felt that his judgment of Seireitei seemed to have a slight deviation, compared with Seireitei's original trajectory, when she was willing to abandon everything and escape from the Seireitei with Yorishishiuin. Seireitei now seems to be more persistent in herself. Perhaps, I should have given Seireitei trust at the beginning, Makoto Senju thought secretly. At the moment when Makoto Senju untied the hymn rope on Seireitei, whose spirit should have been in a weak state, almost pounced on the recorder in Makoto Senju's hand with the posture of a vicious dog pouncing on its food. Makoto Senju. Then, Seireitei carefully held the recorder with both hands, and carefully put the recording to her ear to play it. For a moment, Seireitei was almost trapped in a world of her own, with both joy and sadness on her face. As Makoto Senju brought Seireitei to Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryoshida, they were ready to attack again after recovering from their injuries. We have lost the advantage of rescuing Rukia Kachiki in the chaos of the Seireitei. Now we continue to go to the Palace of Confession. The only thing waiting for us is a trap. We are not even sure whether Rukia Kachiki is still imprisoned in it. Makoto Senju's words were almost like a basin of cold water poured on Ichigo Kurosaki's head. Uncle Kurosaki, then, what should we do? Senju Makoto looked at Seireitei, who was completely immersed in the conversation with the recorder and had no other reaction, then sighed and said. Things have developed to this point. We can almost declare the plan of raiding the Seireitei to rescue Rukia Kachiki a failure. The only chance left, Senju Makoto's highly contagious words unconsciously aroused the emotions of Kurosaki, Ichigo and Ishidori. The only chance? The only hope? Execution. Senju Makoto raised a finger and said. Tomorrow is the day when Rukia Kachiki will be executed. It is also the moment of execution. That Rukia Kachiki will never be fake. That is also the last chance to rescue Rukia Kachiki. On the contrary, that execution will be watched by many captains. So, if you really want to rescue Rukia Kachiki, then there is only one way left, that is to defeat all the enemies in front of you and rescue Rukia Kachiki by force. As these words echoed in Ichigo Kurosaki's ears, they did not extinguish Ichigo Kurosaki's faith, but instead made Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes seem to be burning with blazing fire. Under the deliberate polishing of Makoto Senju, Ichigo Kurosaki, who has come all the way to this point, has long been free of the slightest hesitation in his heart. As for Ishida, his eyes were more focused on Makoto Senju, and what he revealed was still the firm gaze of following. However, compared to the captains of the GOTY 13, your strength is still a little insufficient, and there are some shortcomings. After a pause, Senju Makoto looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and said, especially you, Ichigo, if you can master Shunpo and Bankai within one day, your chances of winning will be greatly improved. Chapter 461a. New Road. Shunpo. Bankai. At this moment, Ichigo Kurosaki was obviously no longer the substitute Shinigami who was fooled by Rukia Kachaki. In the constant battles in the Seireitei, Ichigo Kurosaki had a deep understanding of Shinigami. Ichigo Kurosaki frowned slightly, as if he was thinking about something. The next moment, Ichigo Kurosaki disappeared from the spot and appeared more than 100 meters away, and then returned to the spot in a few flashes. Is this Shunpo, Uncle Kurosaki? Ichigo Kurosaki asked. Until this time, Ichigo Kurosaki's Shunpo slightly attracted Seireitei's attention, and asked, "Who taught you Shunpo?" "I learned it from Hitsuge Itrashiro." Ichigo Kurosaki replied. "It's rough, but the talent is good." Seireitei briefly commented and said, "In this way, it is not impossible to achieve the level of Shunpo mastery within a day." Ichigo Kurosaki heard this, his face was slightly happy, and he turned to ask Senju Makoto. "What about Bankai?" "Wait," Senju Makoto said, and then dug out something similar to a doll from the ground not far from the healing hot spring. Turning divine body. "How do you have this?" Seireitei asked in surprise. Senju Makoto smiled and answered. "This is a prop that the former captain of the 2nd Division, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, originally prepared for the vice-captain of the 4th Division, Senju Makoto, but Senju Makoto didn't use it back then, so it has been left here. It just so happens that Ichigo can use it now." "What special function does it have?" Ishida asked. "In simple terms, since the essence of Bankai is to make the soul submit to the god of death, and the role of the Seireitei is to insert the zanpakutō into it, and then forcibly materialize the zanpakutō soul, so that the god of death can quickly achieve Bankai. Of course, there is a price to pay. In a sense, the role of the Seireitei also allows the zanpakutō soul to escape the control of the god of death in a short period of time, and it is different from the submission battle in the spiritual space." After a pause, Senju Makoto's tone became more serious. "In the real world, the materialized soul may really kill the god of death, so Ichigo, you have to think carefully about whether." However, before Senju Makoto finished speaking, the zanpakutō in Ichigo Kurosaki's hand was directly inserted into the Seireitei. Ichigo Kurosaki's firm tone also sounded, and said, "Uncle Kurosaki, there's no need to think about it. If we retreat now, wouldn't that be a disappointment to you?" Upon hearing this, Senju Makoto couldn't help but curl his lips slightly, expressing his admiration for Ichigo Kurosaki's rare enlightenment. "Ichigo, then don't waste too much time on the practice of Bankai, the practice of Shunpo is still waiting for you." Almost at the same time that Senju Makoto's voice fell, the appearance of the god-transforming body quickly changed into an uncle wearing a black robe and black sunglasses. Senju Makoto looked at Zanjitsu with a meaningful look, and took Seireitei and Ishida away respectively, leaving enough space for Ichigo Kurosaki to practice Bankai. Then, Senju Makoto turned his gaze back to Ishida, who looked delicate and gentle beside him, and said, "Rai, then do you understand where your flaws are?" "Uncle Kurosaki, I." Ishida lowered his head and hesitated for a long time. He tried hard to answer but couldn't say anything. Senju Makoto's gentle eyes saw through the depths of Ishida's heart, and he spoke slowly. "You are confused, Rai. You felt powerless in the battle with Kikushinsui and Jikitijashiro, and witnessed the endless rain of spirit arrows, so your heart was shaken, right?" Ishida's lips opened and closed for a while, and finally just said one sentence. "I'm sorry, my talent is too poor." Senju Makoto spoke with some earnestness. "Rai, you are not a pure-blooded quincy, so you can't use the static blood armor, dynamic blood armor and other exclusive abilities of pure-blooded quincy. In a sense, you seem to have reached the end of your path as a mixed-blood quincy. Comparable to the combat power of the captain level, in fact, it is already a level that cannot be underestimated, but it's still not enough, right?" Ishida listened to the words that seemed to be questioning his heart, nodded, and said with gritted teeth, "Not enough." Whether it's following behind Uncle Kurosaki or taking on the honor of being a queency again, how can this be enough? Really? Senju Cheng looked at the child in front of him who, in a sense, he had watched grow up, and his heart couldn't help but be touched. Compared with the original trajectory, Ishidori is undoubtedly much stronger, but compared with the real top combat power, Ishidori's shortcomings are obvious. However, Ishidori's mixed blood queency talent has undoubtedly reached its peak. If he wants to go further, Senju Cheng's eyes flickered slightly, and then he spoke. Rick, in fact, your muscle dragon form does have great potential to be developed in close combat. It is not only about improving physical strength, but more importantly, it is about improving lethality. In the past, since the muscle dragon form was more of a byproduct of your arm training, even if you use the muscle dragon form, you would fight with your bare hands. It is precisely because of this that you will find it extremely difficult to fight against enemies of similar level or even stronger than you. As soon as these words came out, Ishidori's eyes were bright. It must be said that Senju Cheng's evaluation was not wrong. Ishidori was not obvious when fighting against a captain like Kurosaki Mayuri, who was also not good at close combat, but when facing a close combat expert like Kikuchansui. If Kikuchansui had not intentionally shown some mercy, I am afraid that Ishidori, who was unarmed, would have been chopped to pieces by Kikuchansui. So, you may need a weapon that can be used as a spirit bow for close combat. After a pause, Senju Cheng thought about Ishidori's situation and said, no, rather than a bow, it would be more appropriate to use a weapon that combines the functions of a crossbow and melee combat. In an instant, Ishidori felt that his path suddenly became extremely clear and open. That's right. Isn't it normal for a queency archer to use a crossbow? Just use your strong arm strength to pull open the crossbow and place the arrow, maintain melee combat under normal circumstances, and use the loaded arrows hidden in the weapon to launch a sneak attack when necessary. Do you have any favorite melee weapon style? Senju Cheng asked. Ishidori thought for a moment and said hesitantly. It could be a halberd, right? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 462 Sakura Night Chat. That night, in the Unohana courtyard of the 4th Division's barracks. Compared to the other divisions, which were almost all nervously and urgently making various arrangements in order to deal with various emergencies that might occur on the day of execution tomorrow, the atmosphere in the courtyard was still so quiet. Under the oldest cherry tree in the Seireitei garden, a cherry blossom slowly fell in the air, and then fell into the teacup that Unohana Retsu had just held in her jade hand, and it was still spinning slowly. Even the oldest cherry tree cannot avoid withering cherry blossoms. It is really a pity that it cannot bloom forever. The moment when it falls brilliantly is really beautiful. Unohana Retsu looked at the crescent moon in the night sky, and seemed to be quite touched, and said something meaningful. Sitting opposite Unohana Retsu, Inaudori just felt restless. Inaudori originally thought that after being arrested by the Gotti 13, she would suffer some terrible torture and abuse, and Inaudori secretly encouraged herself and vowed that she would never betray the information of Kurosaki teacher. What Inaudori did not expect was that after she did what Kurosaki teacher said, the beautiful captain who seemed to be full of tenderness brought her to this beautiful and quiet courtyard, and then, tasted tea. Could it be that Kurosaki teacher has secretly made some connections with Unohana captain? Or has a net been laid here, waiting for Kurosaki teacher to come and save herself? What should I do? Did Ishida-san escape? I heard that Kachiki-san will be executed tomorrow. Just when Inaudori's thoughts in her head were consciously a mess, Unohana Retsu pushed a cup of tea in front of Inaudori, with a gentle smile and a tone that made people subconsciously close. Let's have a cup of tea first. Suddenly, Ori seemed to see the shadow of Kurosaki-sensei in Unohana Retsu. When she worked in the flower shop, whenever she did something wrong and was about to be scolded by Kurosaki-sensei, he would always give her a cup of tea so gently. It was the same gentle smile, and the tone that made people subconsciously close and feel at ease. Ori, who unconsciously relaxed a lot, obediently picked up the cup of tea and tasted it carefully. Ori. Right. Yes. Ori responded quickly. I heard you talk about the details of Kurosaki Makoto from time to time before, and many of them were related to me. It seems that Kurosaki Makoto is not on guard against you. Unohana Retsu asked gently. Ori, who had relaxed, blinked her eyes. This question was obviously beyond the outline prepared by Senju Cheng for her. Yes. Alright, Inoue answered nervously. Don't be nervous, I'm just the captain of the medical team. Fighting and the like have nothing to do with me, so I won't have any intention of hurting you. The reason why I brought you back to the courtyard is that I want to learn about some changes in the real world. After all, as the captain of the medical team, I have too few opportunities to go to the real world. Hanaretsu said with some emotion, and poured another cup of tea for Inoue. The gentle and intimate tone made Inoue's inner defense unconsciously let go, and Inoue gradually talked about some things about her daily life. I see. That sounds interesting. Ah. That's how it is. Alright, I must have been lonely and miserable at the time, right? No problem. If you have a chance, you must try Orime's unique cuisine. It should be delicious. Hanaretsu was very friendly, responding to her from time to time and showing concern for Inoue. This made Inoue gradually seem to resonate with Hanaretsu. Her vigilance towards Hanaretsu almost completely disappeared. Unknowingly, she regarded Hanaretsu as a caring older sister and a teacher who pitied her. However, what Inoue did not realize was that under Hanaretsu's silent guidance, she began to talk about the various things between her and Kurosaki Makoto. It's really embarrassing to say that I always bump into Kurosaki-sensei without realizing it. Oh, really? Kurosaki Makoto won't blame you, right? No, Kurosaki-sensei is really kind, he never gets angry, and he always prepares food for me. Kurosaki Makoto sounds so kind. Of course, Kurosaki-sensei is the best in the world. When Inoue said this, there was light in her eyes, and Hanaretsu was still smiling and holding the teacup and sipping the tea. His eyes swept over Inoue's holy text that was not inferior to his own, and said softly, I think Kurosaki Makoto will also be happy to have a student like you. No, I think I always cause a lot of trouble to Kurosaki-sensei, and make Kurosaki-sensei always take extra care of me like that. I must have caused trouble to Kurosaki-sensei, right? What kind of trouble do you think it is? Alright. Hanaretsu blew the hot air from the teacup and asked casually. For example, Mr. Kurosaki asked me to work in his flower shop. There are two very beautiful maids in the shop. Sister M and Sister Ying are both very capable. In addition to the affairs in the flower shop, even Mr. Kurosaki's daily life is perfectly taken care of by them. Comparatively, I can't help at all. Sometimes I just prepare some food for a black cat named Yorishi and entertain customers who come to buy flowers. Wait, Hanaretsu slowly put his teacup on the table and asked with interest. Two maids? Remon-jin. And a black cat named Yorishi. Yes, Mr. Kurosaki likes that black cat very much. He often gets bored and holds the black cat Yorishi in his arms, drinking tea and petting the cat all day long. Unfortunately, I may not be very popular with small animals. So far, I have not been able to touch the black cat smoothly. At the end, Inoue spoke with a somewhat disappointed tone. Hanaretsu said with her gentle eyes narrowed into a slit. Really? It sounds like a really cute cat, but it sounds like it likes to steal fish. Steal fish? Inoue asked in confusion. Yes, cats can't help stealing fish. Hanaretsu said with some anticipation, turning the teacup. If there's a chance, I'd like to pet it, too. If there's a chance, Inoue, who didn't realize anything was wrong, said cheerfully. When the time comes, I'll let Captain Hana and meet Remon-jin. Chapter 463. Sudden order. At this point, Inoue's voice could not help but pause, and she also realized that she might not have the chance to return to the real world in her situation. Don't worry, just rest in peace from now on. As if she saw the complicated thoughts of Inoue, Hanaretsu persuaded her. Inoue bit her lip tightly and said worriedly. But Kurosaki-sensei, and Kurosaki-san, Ishida-san, Kachika-san, as for them, you don't need to worry about them. After a pause, Hanaretsu's tone changed and he spoke gently. By the way, if Orime doesn't mind tonight, sleep with me. Her. Orime was suddenly stunned, and the whole person was a little unable to react. Sleep together. Looking at the gentle and beautiful big sister in front of her, who was almost like the temperament of Yamato and Chiko, Orime's face unconsciously became ruddy, and she said, You. Captain Hana, this is not good, right? My sleeping position may not be good. It's okay. Yuna Hanaretsu stood up, took Inoue Orime's hand and walked towards the living room, saying, "It's just right, I want to check Orime's body and confirm whether Orime has any unknown injuries that have not been noticed." "No, Captain Yuna, I also have the ability to heal." "No, some injuries cannot be confirmed by simple healing ability, and need to be confirmed from the perspective of medical skills." At the same time, as the night deepened in the Seireitei, the Pure Tao Forest, it is the place where the 40 sages and 6 judges who make up the central 46 chambers live. It is also one of the absolute forbidden areas of the Seireitei. Even the captain-level Shinigami cannot enter it without the permission of the central 46 chambers. In addition, on the outskirts of the Pure Pagoda Forest, the 13th Gotti Squad, the Kitmushu, and the direct troops under the central 46 chamber were also on alert to prevent any disaster from attacking the central 46 chamber during this special period of the Pure Pagoda Forest. It was precisely because there were a large number of forbidden areas in the Pure Pagoda Forest that a large number of the Gotti Squad's manpower was consumed when Senju Cheng was hiding in the dark. However, in the lines of defense that were strictly guarded in the Pure Pagoda Forest, Tosen Kaname, wearing the captain's Aori, walked through the lines of defense as if no one was around. Those people who formed the lines of defense seemed to be completely unaware of Tosen Kaname's existence, and allowed Tosen Kaname to push open the door of the Pure Pagoda Forest and walk in. After walking through the long passage, when Tosen Kaname arrived at the central area of the Pure Pagoda Forest, a strong smell of blood that made him feel happy drifted into Tosen Kaname's nose. "Dongxianyo, this is the smell of death, the delicious smell of the blood of the 40 sages and 6 judges of the central 46 chamber." Although Dongxianyo has smelled this smell countless times during this period of time, it still makes Dongxianyo feel incomparable joy. Those noble central 46 chambers that were high above, despised, looked down on, and played with others, now died here quietly like dead dogs. Great. Dongxianyo's whole body twitched unconsciously, took a deep breath again, and murmured, "Ji Quang, Ji Quang, Ji Quang, wait a little longer, soon justice will completely clean up the entire Jingling court and send all the residue to hell." When Dongxianyo seemed to be completely immersed in a kind of emotion full of pleasure and hatred, the figure of Zaraki Furuya slowly emerged in front of Dongxianyo. Although Tosen Kaname was blind, it did not affect his sensitivity to spiritual pressure. Almost the moment Zaraki Furuya appeared, Tosen Kaname instantly entered the battle state. Who? Even though Tosen Kaname knew that nothing in the Pure Tao Forest could be leaked, Tosen Kaname swung his blade at Zaraki Furuya faster than the questioning. "I am here to convey the order of Aizen Sosokyu." The next moment, as Zaraki Furuya said, Tosen Kaname's zanpakutō suddenly stopped. Tosen Kaname frowned and asked in doubt, "Who are you?" "This is not the information you should care about," Zaraki Furuya said briefly and calmly. "Aizen Sosoku's order requires you to immediately issue an emergency order to all the nobles of the Seireitei in the name of the Central 46 Chamber." Tosen Kaname seemed to have thought of something and asked urgently, "What emergency order?" Due to the collapse of a large number of noble mansions and the threat of travel disasters, all nobles are not allowed to leave the area of Noble Street, and the 6th Division is stationed near Noble Street to take up defensive tasks. As Zaraki Furuya finished speaking, Tosen Kaname clearly heard his heart begin to beat suddenly, because Tosen Kaname had once proposed a similar suggestion to Aizen Sosoku, the purpose of which was nothing more than to take advantage of the fact that the execution of Ryukyu would attract the attention of many captains, including the captain of the noble division, Ryukyu, to gather a large number of nobles together, and then kill them all. With the importance that Ryukyu of the 6th Division treated Ryukyu, even if Ryukyu would not abandon all the glory belonging to the Kachike family and rescue Ryukyu at all costs. But considering how much Ryukyu cherishes Rukia, he will definitely go to the double killing hill to send her off. In this case, what's the difference between the large number of nobles nominally included in the 6th Division and those who have no defense at all? However, the advice given by Tosen Kaname was changed by Aizen Sosoku. In the near future, the existence of the nobles will only cause a burden to the living power of the Seireitei. Once the nobles are killed, it will only allow Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni to further gain control of the Seireitei and further concentrate the power of the Seireitei in the 13th Division of the Gotti. This will be detrimental to our subsequent plans. After the main plan is completed, we can crush the nobles who were in the way bit by stepping on the corpses of the losers of the 13th Division of the Gotti. Lord Aizen, you actually changed your mind? Really? Is Lord Aizen planning to take the opportunity to attack the nobles of the Seireitei? It's true. No one except Lord Aizen would know all this and issue this order to me. Thinking of this, Tosun-Kaname's ecstasy was almost uncontrollable, and then he gritted his teeth, showing a very ferocious expression, and said, "No problem." Chapter 464. The Hill of Double Death. The next day, as the sun rose, the entire Seireitei gradually became more and more tense. In the captain's courtyard of the 4th Division's barracks, in fact, just like the 13th Division, the position of vice-captain was vacant. As Unohanaretsu's de facto deputy, Aokiriza and Kotetsuya came to the courtyard early. However, when Aokiriza and Kotetsuya came to the door of Unohanaretsu's living room and waited for Unohanaretsu to appear, the living room door suddenly opened, and the figure that appeared was not Unohanaretsu, but a girl wearing a slightly loose kimono, rushing out with a ruddy face. Aokiriza, Kotetsuya. In the confused eyes of Aokiriza and Kotetsuya, Unohanaretsu, who was still so gentle and dignified, walked out of the living room without haste. "Captain, who was that just now?" Aokiriza asked blankly. "One of the traveling troubles, a human girl, in a rhyme," Unohanaretsu introduced. But how did the traveling troubles girl come out of the captain's living room?" Kotetsuya also asked in confusion. "In order to prevent the traveling troubles Kurosaki Makotao from attacking in a rhyme at night, it is safer for me to take care of her myself first," Unohanaretsu answered. After this, Aokiriza and Kotetsuya couldn't help but feel that it made sense. After all, yesterday, Kurosaki Makotao rescued Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishirai under the surveillance of Captains Shunsuikaku and Joshiro Yukitoku. In this case, it is reasonable for Captain Unohana to be on high alert, right? However, Aokiriza and Kotetsuya have been managing the 4th Division for decades, and they no longer have the overly naive thinking of the past. They almost noticed some loopholes in the process. If Kurosaki Makotao really attacks at night, wouldn't Captain Unohana's situation become dangerous? In this case, it seems more appropriate to put in Aorihime in prison. However, seeing that Unohanaretsu did not seem to continue to explain, Aokiriza and Kotetsuya did not dare to ask further, but hurriedly followed Unohanaretsu and reported on the various preparations and arrangements of the 4th Division. Unohanaretsu nodded, glanced at Aokiriza and Kotetsuya, and then said, "Come with me to the Double Killing Hill, and Riz will stay in the 4th Division to preside over the arrangements for possible emergency medical support." After a pause, Unohanaretsu added, "As for the travel disaster girl, let her stay in the courtyard and don't run around." "Yes, Captain." Then, Unohanaretsu took Kotetsuya out of the 4th Division's barracks and headed towards the Double Killing Hill without haste. As they got closer to the Double Killing Hill, the figures of captains appeared one after another in front of Kotetsuya along the way. Kachika Byakuya, Komamura Sajin, Kakushansui, Hitsuge Yashiro, Zaraka Kenpachi, Yukita Joshiro, and Yamamoto Janraisai Shichikuni. There is no doubt that the Double Killing Hill has gathered almost all the captains of the entire GOTY 13. Seeing this, Kotetsuya couldn't help but breathe faster because of this scene. This is undoubtedly the first time in recent decades that so many captains have gathered in public, except for the captains' meeting. However, Kotetsuya thought about the serious damage caused by the travelers who broke into the Seireitei this time, and understood why the captains took it to such an extent. After all, the opponents this time have created a brilliant record of defeating the captains one after another. Among them, the Queen Makotao Kurosaki, who was the leader, even killed Captain Aizen Sasuke, and fought against Captain Kakushansui and Captain Yukita Joshiro to escape calmly. It can be said that the threat shown by Kurosaki Makotao has reached a level that the GOTY 13 cannot tolerate. Just when Kotetsuya felt that his mind was a little confused by the spiritual pressure of the captains, the figure of Kachika Rukia being escorted to the Double Death Hill shocked Kotetsuya's spirit, and a bit of sadness appeared in his eyes. As members of the same female Shinigami association, the relationship between Kotetsuya and Kachika Rukia was not very good, but they were also friends who knew each other well. Soon, under the watchful eyes of the captains and many other lieutenants, Kachika Rukia was restrained on the frame and slowly rose into the air. Kachika Rukia was wearing a white plain dress representing a sinner, and she looked so helpless and fragile when she was restrained in the air, as if she was a weak originally grown in Rukonge placed in front of the Seireitei to be destroyed. At this scene, the eyes of some captains watching below trembled obviously, among whom Byakuya Kachika and Joshiro Yukitoku were the most shocked. Unlike the cold expression on the surface, the joints of Byakuya Kachika's hands hitting his sleeves almost turn white, and his heart felt as if it was about to be torn apart. Compared with the original trajectory, Byakuya Kachika's feelings for Rukia Kachika at this moment are even deeper. From infancy to now, Rukia Kachika has grown up little by little under Byakuya Kachika's watch. Rather than saying that Rukia Kachika is Byakuya Kachika's nominal sister, it can be said that in Byakuya Kachika's mind, he almost treats Rukia Kachika as his own daughter. Scenes of memories related to Rukia Kachika surged, and his wife Kachika his as expression of grief but forcing herself not to disturb him too much. In contrast, what emerged in Byakuya Kachika's mind were his grandfather Kachika Jinrin and his father Kachika Sojin's adherence to the glory of the Kachika family. His teeth were unconsciously clenched tightly, making Byakuya Kachika's fair face almost pale. Reason and emotion were constantly fighting in Byakuya Kachika's heart. Staring at the figure of Rukia Kachika, Byakuya Kachika couldn't help but think of his former friend. Makoto, if it were you, what would you choose? In addition to Byakuya Kachika, Yukito Jushiro's actions were more obvious. He hesitated several times and wanted to speak several times. However, just as Yukito Jushiro watched the torture device named Double Punishment about to be released, he couldn't help but want to do something. Kakushansui, who was still wrapped in bandages, took a step to the side, implicitly stopping Yukito Jushiro's hesitation, then gave Yukito Jushiro a look, and then shook his head. Chapter 465. Destroying the King Parasui. Yukito Jushiro whispered to Kakushansui, with a bit of impatience in his tone. As the captain of Kachika Rukia, Yukito Jushiro obviously loves Kachika Rukia very much. However, Kakushansui still shook his head slightly. Kakushansui knew Yukito Jushiro's thoughts very well. Not only was the punishment of Kachika Rukia by the Central 46th Chamber too severe, which unexpectedly caused the problem of the travel blast in Seireitei, but also the instructions issued by the Central 46th Chamber since the travel blast appeared, which made Kakushansui and Yukito Jushiro quite confused. In addition, Kurosaki Makoto's previous series of strange actions and excuses made Kakushansui and Yukito Jushiro even more confused. Especially Yukito Jushiro and Kurosaki Makoto have been exchanging letters for many years, and he did not think that Kurosaki Makoto would be the kind of evil person who rashly killed the captain of the 5th Division, Aiden Sosok. Under such doubts, Yukito Jushiro undoubtedly had the idea of stopping the execution. Don't worry, Kurosaki Makoto is not a simple guy, he is not in a hurry, let's wait and see what happens, Kakushansui whispered to Yukito Jushiro's ear. And during the communication between Kakushansui and Yukito Jushiro, the supreme torture instrument placed on the hill of Shwansui, which was used by the Seireitei for execution, also began to be released. The flames rose up. In the astonished eyes of many new death gods, the Shwansui spear that originally stood on the ground, a large amount of flames burst out. An invisible sound like a cry faintly echoed in the ears of all the death gods present, and the invisible oppression suddenly descended, and the Shwansui spear seemed to be wrapped in a large amount of flames and turned into a flying fire phoenix in an instant. Is that the double penetration? What a sense of oppression! Is it the torture instrument that can cut off the bodies of all criminals according to rumors? It has the destructive power equivalent to 1 million zanpakutō. Amid the exclamations, feeling the terrifying oppressive force emanating from the double penetration spear that seemed to have transformed into a fire phoenix, Kotetsuin's face also turned slightly pale. Suddenly, Unohanaretsu's gentle back blocked in front of Kotetsuin, blocking most of the oppressive feeling for Kotetsuin. Captain Yuin, if you feel too reluctant, it's okay to step back a little. Unohanaretsu said gently. I'm fine, Captain. Kotetsuin replied. Unohanaretsu nodded and said. After the double death hill is unsealed, the form it takes is called Kanking. It is somewhat similar to a zanpakutō, but in fact it is one of the sacred weapons that has been passed down since ancient times. After cutting or piercing the body of the god of death, its power will instantly expand dozens of times. As soon as these words came out, Kotetsuin's face turned pale, and his eyes once again looked at Kachika Rukia, who was tied to the execution rack. Compared with the Fire Phoenix Cow King who exuded terrifying deterrence, Kachika Rukia was almost like a tiny grain of white rice. As long as the Cow King lowered his head slightly, Kachika Rukia would be completely turned into ashes. So, Rukia won't even leave a trace of dust. Kotetsuin said with a slightly trembling voice. Yes, in a sense, when the King of Destruction penetrates the body of the criminal, it also symbolizes that the execution must be over. As Unohana Retsu's gentle explanation sounded, the flames emanating from the King of Destruction rising above the double execution hill rose again, and the huge body almost completely enveloped the double execution hill, faintly seeming to have turned into another sun above the jingling court under the scorching sun. The execution begins. Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's majestic voice sounded, and the King of Destruction, accompanied by an invisible cry, roared and fell towards Kachika Rukia with endless flames. This scene made some of the Shinigami who were watching the execution not far away subconsciously close their eyes. Among them, Kachika Rukia, whose entire field of vision seemed to be completely occupied by the King of Destruction, also began to slowly close her eyes. "I'm sorry, sister, Byakuya brother, I'm sorry. Ichigo, please come to the Seireitei." At this moment, a black shadow suddenly crashed into the blazing flames like a meteor, and a roar echoed in the double-killing hill. "Rukia!" This shout, like thunder, made Kachika Rukia's eyes, which had been slowly closing, suddenly open. Then, what came into view was Kachika Rukia, dressed in the death suit, and the orange-haired boy who came with the flash step, Kurosaki Ichigo. Moreover, in the astonished eyes of Kachika Rukia, Kurosaki Ichigo actually brazenly swung his sword at the King of Destruction in front of him, who had almost the same power as 1,000,000 zanpakutō. Bang! With a loud noise, in the shocked eyes of Kachika Rukia, the original poor Shinigami agent Kurosaki Ichigo actually blocked the peck of the King of Destruction. The heat waves generated by the rising flames made the death hegemony suit on Ichigo Kurosaki rustle. That somewhat frail body was like an insurmountable wall, blocking everything for Rukia Kachika. Stupid idiot! Rukia Kachika's eyes unconsciously shed tears crazily, as if she saw a ray of warm sunshine in the abyss of despair. However, in response to Rukia Kachika, it was Ichigo Kurosaki who turned his head as if he just passed by, and said with a bit of joy, "Rukia, I'm here to pick you up." Rukia Kachika was stunned. When the King of Destruction, who had transformed into a fire phoenix, was blocked from executing for the first time, she began to slowly retreat, and she kept cursing at Ichigo Kurosaki. "Idiot, who asked you to save me? Hurry up and leave." Ichigo Kurosaki was obviously quite familiar with the personality of this rather arrogant onion-headed girl, and responded to the curse without caring. "Well, now that we're here, leave everything to me." "Idiot, do you think you're proud of blocking the first attack of the King of Destruction?" As a member of the Kachika family, Kachika Rukia obviously has a good understanding of that King of Destruction, and said in a hurried tone. "The final form of the King of Destruction has the destructive power of more than 1,000,000 zanpakutō, but this will not be fully exerted the first time, but will be superimposed again and again after each execution is blocked and failed. Finally, until the destructive power of 1,000,000 zanpakutō is superimposed, everything in front of it will be completely destroyed." Chapter 466. The arrow that penetrates the sky of Jingling Court. Let's go. Once again, Rukia Kachika reiterated this to Ichigo Kurosaki. However, after Ichigo Kurosaki blocked the second attack released by the King of Destruction, he still had no intention of retreating. His slightly immature body seemed to contain an unshakable belief. "Rukia." Ichigo Kurosaki's slightly deep and serious voice sounded. "Ah?" Rukia Kachika. "This time, it's not just me who comes to save you, but also everyone," Ichigo Kurosaki said. Just as Ichigo Kurosaki's words echoed in the double-killing hill, a terrifying spiritual pressure that enveloped the entire double-killing hill suddenly erupted. It was like the scorching sun, the vast ocean, and the towering mountains. At this moment, even Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, who had always remained calm when Ichigo Kurosaki appeared and blocked the King of Destruction, suddenly opened his slightly closed eyes and uttered a word. Such spiritual pressure. As for the other Shinigami present, the vice-captains with weaker spiritual pressure, such as Kotetsu, Shigetetsu Zeman, and Matsumoto Rangiku, felt that their consciousness was being oppressed and their whole bodies were a little shaky. Then, almost all the Shinigami looked towards the source of the terrifying spiritual pressure instinctively. It was at the highest point of the Palace of Confession, which seemed to be facing each other from a distance, facing the Cheng-ge hill tower in the Seireitei. In the sight of the Shinigami, there was a figure that seemed so small and inconspicuous. Kurosaki Makotao. As captains who had felt Kurosaki Makotao's spiritual pressure up close, Kakushunsui and Jikitid Jushiro blurted out the words. At this moment, with the corners of their mouths slightly raised, revealing a little tenderness and pride, a doubt also shrouded the hearts of the captains present. There is no doubt that the person at the Twin Strike Hill, which has gathered almost all the captains of the entire Seireitei, is really afraid of and is on guard against to rescue Rukia Kachika, is undoubtedly Kuroseki Makatao, who has proven to have a combat power far beyond that of ordinary captains. However, what all the captains did not expect is that the only person who appeared at the Twin Strike Hill was Kuroseki Ichigo, and the one that the captains really feared was Kuroseki Makatao, who appeared on the top of the penitential palace, which was far away from the Twin Strike Hill. At such a distance, what does he want to do? At this moment, standing at the highest point of the entire Seireitei, Senju Makatao looked at the Twin Strike Hill at the end of his sight from a distance, and then stretched out his palm towards the front. A huge ancient spirit bow that was so big that it was almost as tall as Senju Makatao was formed in front of him. Then, a large number of spirit particles gathered frantically towards the spirit bow in the hands of Senju Makatao in the form of spirit particle absorption unique to the Quincy. During this period, Senju Makatao raised his left foot to support the bow in a rather elegant manner, and pulled the bowstring back with his right hand. In an instant, the speed of spirit particle absorption that continued to gather in the giant ancient spirit bow accelerated again, and even formed a materialized spirit particle vortex with Senju Makatao as the center. The string was fully pulled, and the arrow was formed. In the eyes of the death gods far away in the double death hill, it looked like a starlight vortex formed on the top of the confession palace when a large number of spirit particles were absorbed. And at the center of the vortex, that bright spot was like a bright moon facing the scorching sun transformed by the fire phoenix. Gradually, an incredible and terrible idea formed in the minds of the death gods. No way! A mere Quincy, do you think you can smash the King of Destruction from a distance with one arrow on the top of the Palace of Confession? Just at this moment, when Ichigo Kuroseki blocked the attack of the King of Destruction for the fourth time and was obviously exhausted, Senju Makatao's loud voice rang out from the top of the Palace of Confession, echoing in the sky and reaching the double-killing hill. The Seireitei used the King of Destruction to judge whether my student Kachika Rukia was guilty, and her crime can be said to be powerlessness. Then why don't the 13th Gotti take my blow that is about to penetrate the King of Destruction and prove their innocence? This loud and arrogant words made the Shinigami of the double-killing hill, whether they were vice-captains or captains, almost all of them widened their eyes, compared with the previous behavior of the travelers sneaking into the Seireitei like rats. Senju Makatao at this moment was tantamount to directly provoking the 13th Gotti, and even the entire Seireitei. As Senju Makatao finished speaking, the galaxy of spirit particles that shone from the top of the Confession Palace suddenly turned into a point of extreme brilliance. The spirit particle arrow that seemed to gather the stars roared towards the double-killing hill, followed by countless starlight made of spirit particles, faintly torn air, and a violent tornado that suddenly appeared. This scene also really angered one person. The strongest god of death in Soul Society, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. Maniac. A roar sounded as if it was going to tear the eardrum apart. The cane that Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni originally held in his hand was burned to ashes by the flames that appeared out of thin air, revealing an ancient zanpakutō hidden in it. The strongest and oldest zanpakutō of the heat system in Soul Society, Raijin-jaka. The spiritual pressure that was as hot as the sun suddenly erupted from Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's body, and an extremely angry ancient world spirit was transmitted to the ears of the god of death. Everything is reduced to ashes. Raijin-jaka. A purer, hotter, and more terrifying flame than that of King of Destruction burst out from the blade at Raijin-jaka, and with it, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni burst out. Countless Shinigami were involuntarily attracted by the terrifying figure of Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, who seemed to be wrapped in blazing flames. Even people like Kakushansui and Jikitijashiro, who were direct disciples of Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, couldn't help but murmur. The old man actually took the initiative to attack. In the history of Soul Society in the past few hundred years, this is the first time that the old man took the initiative to attack against an external enemy, and at the moment when Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni released his zanpakutō, the spirit arrow that seemed to be sweeping across the spirit galaxy had already crossed a very long distance, and was about to approach King of Destruction as if it had broken through the sky. However, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's terrifying body was undoubtedly faster, and at the same time it turned into a residual image. It was not until this moment that some captains who knew Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni very well noticed that Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni was surprised to see that he had performed zanpakutō Shikai in an unsheathed state before. At this moment, he released the sword drawing slash that returned to its original state, and then burst out from the scabbard, and the endless flames that burst out like a volcano. Chapter 467. The Destroyed King. The infinite flames that suddenly burst out turned into a giant flame blade in an instant, slashing at the spirit arrow in front of the Destroyer King. However, the earth-shattering collision that the death gods expected did not occur. Under the gaze of the death gods, the spirit vortex that was originally carried by the tail of the spirit arrow suddenly seemed to turn into a series of spirit flow belts, wrapping up that dazzling spirit arrow. Boom. The next moment, the dazzling spirit arrow penetrated fusion, and while the spirit flow belts wrapped around it were consumed, it instantly sank into the chest of the Destroyer King, who was about to launch the fifth attack. In an instant, the Destroyer King, who looked like a fire phoenix, suddenly froze, and then, accompanied by an invisible wail, countless flames rolled back towards his chest frantically. What? In the unbelievable eyes of the Shinigami, the King of Destruction, who turned into a fire phoenix, suddenly dissipated into the air, and was replaced by a double-piercing spear that broke in mid-air and fell to the ground. Bang bang! The double-piercing spear that broke into two pieces and fell to the ground made two sharp sounds in succession, as if it symbolized the dignity of the Seireitei and the GOTY 13, being completely pierced and destroyed by a mere queensy under the scorching sun. The next moment, a flame that was much hotter than the flame emitted by the King of Destruction rose from Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu's body. The terrifying and scorching spiritual pressure made many vice-captain-level Shinigami around feel that even a slight breath would burn their lungs. Whether it was the Captain Seireitei of the 1st Squadron on Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu's body or the death suit on his upper body, they were instantly burned to ashes under this furious and scorching flame. For a moment, on the double-killing hill, the hideous scars on almost every corner of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu's body, as well as the powerful and majestic muscles that seemed to be able to shoulder the entire Jingliang like a rock, were revealed, making the people who saw it subconsciously feel awe. Magman. Die. Suddenly, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu turned into a scorching pillar of fire that reached the sky, and without hesitation passed over the little devil Kuroseki Ichigo, and went straight to the top of the confession palace where Senju Cheng was standing. Feeling the violent and extremely hot spiritual pressure of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu whistling from afar, in response, Senju Cheng chuckled, put away the giant ancient spiritual bow in his hand that was not suitable for normal combat, and then threw away his brand new white windbreaker. With his hands in his pockets, his back turned to Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu, but the spiritual pressure on his body was not concealed at all as he walked deep into the confession palace. This move was nothing less than a more thorough provocation and contempt, provoking the captain of the 13th GOTY squad, and despising Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu, who was known as the strongest Shinigami in Soul Society. Instantly, the flames that rose from Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu's body rose again with rage. Although it was only the first release, the scorching heat spread, but it made the Shinigami on the double-killing hill, who were already quite far away from Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu, feel like they were falling into a furnace. Kuroseki Makoto is really crazy. Although I feel that Kuroseki Makoto is intentionally leading the captain away, is he really not afraid of being instantly turned into ashes under the sword of the extremely angry captain? Ha ha ha, interesting. Amidst a few discussions, some Shinigami almost ignored Kuroseki Ichigo without hesitation and followed Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu. Obviously, in the eyes of some senior captain-level Shinigami, Ichigo Kuroseki's level can be seen at a glance. Ichigo Kuroseki, who was already extremely exhausted after only receiving 4 attacks from the Destroyer King, is almost not at the same level of threat compared to the one who penetrated the attack of the Captain-in-Chief Yamamoto Seireitei Shichibu and destroyed the Destroyer King with one blow. And Ichigo Kuroseki, who witnessed the departure of some Shinigami led by the 3 captains Kikushansui, Yukita Jashiro, and Zaki Kenpachi, and who blocked 4 attacks from the Destroyer King in a row, looked at the empty double-killing hill in front of him, and couldn't help but feel much more excited. Among them, Hitsuge Yashiro, who witnessed the change in Ichigo Kuroseki's expression, spoke in anger. Ichigo Kuroseki, what does that relaxed expression of yours mean? Do you really think you can rescue Rukia Kachika from under our noses and bring disgrace to the reputation of the GOTY 13? Komamura Sajin glanced at Ryukaya Kachika, Chihiro Hitsugaya, and Retsu Unohana beside him, and said, "That's right, there are still 4 captains present. Give up, young traveler, surrendering is your best choice." Makoto Kuroseki, who has repeatedly committed many unforgivable crimes, will surely be reduced to ashes under the flames of the Captain General. Thank you, but Ichigo Kurosaki stacked a knife into the execution rack that bound Rukia Kachika with his backhand, and said sternly, I will rescue Rukia today no matter what. Seeing Ichigo Kurosaki openly hugging Rukia Kachika, who was listed as a death row prisoner, and slowly fallen to the ground with instant step, Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro, who adhere to and uphold the justice of Seireitei, subconsciously drew their swords. As for Rukia Kachika, his face was slightly cold, and he also drew his sword with murderous intent. On the contrary, Unohana led the vice-captains present to retreat a lot and said, This is not a battle that the vice-captains should engage in, retreat. In an instant, seeing that Ichigo Kurosaki seemed to be perceived by three captains, Rukia Kachika, who was limp in Ichigo Kurosaki's arms, could not help but get anxious, and weakly hit Ichigo Kurosaki's chest like a spoiled child, and said, Ichigo, you idiot, what are you still standing there for? Run away. No matter how you think about it, you can't beat three captains at the same time. This scene made Kachika Rukia's palm holding his zanpakutō emit a faint sound of finger bones clashing. However, Kurosaki Ichigo, who was completely unaware of this, rubbed Kachika Rukia's onion head vigorously in front of many Shinigami's faces, and said with some pride, Don't worry, all this is within the expectations of Uncle Kurosaki. I told you that I didn't come here alone. I even prepared the gate to deal with these captains and quickly returned to the real world. Just as Kurosaki Ichigo finished speaking, two after images suddenly stopped beside Kurosaki Ichigo, and one of them, Ishirai, almost angrily scolded him. Ichigo, you idiot. How can someone tell the enemy about his plan so openly? Chapter 468. Unohana Retsu was enraged. You are the idiot. Only idiots won't admit that they're idiots. Then are you an idiot? Ha ha, with your brain, I'm afraid you don't even know what an idiot means. Who said I don't know? Then Kurosaki-san is quite self-aware. For a moment, in the surprised eyes of Rukia Kachika, Ichigo Kurosaki and Raishida, who were originally in deep conflict with each other in the real world, started bickering as if no one was around, and the spit they kept spraying at each other made Rukia Kachika, who was caught in the middle, feel like washing her hair. However, this action was nothing short of naked contempt in the eyes of Komamura Sejin, Hitsugaya Toshiro, and Kachika Rukia. In an instant, the anger of Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro could be seen rising with the naked eye. However, just when Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro were about to take action to get rid of these arrogant and vicious travelers, Kachika Rukia suddenly raised his hand to stop them, his eyes fixed on another figure wrapped in black clothes. Captain Kachika. Is there a problem? Facing the questions of Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro, Kachika Rukia's face became more serious, although, the figure that appeared with Ishirai seemed to be deliberately concealing his spiritual pressure, faintly reducing his presence. But, is it you? Kachika Rukia slowly uttered a name that surprised Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro, Shiguin Yorishi. In an instant, compared with the previous anger, Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro's expressions became much more solemn, as if they were facing a great enemy. This also made Ishirai and Kurosaki Ichigo, who were still spitting at each other, slightly surprised at the identity of Shiguin Yorishi. Shiguin Yorishi, a reinforcement, suddenly appeared when they were about to set out to disrupt the execution. In this regard, Senju Cheng did not specifically explain Shiguin Yorishi's identity to Ishirai and Kurosaki Ichigo, but only introduced her as a trustworthy person. As Kachika Rukia spoke, Shiguin Yorishi, who had been deliberately reducing her presence, said with a teasing smile, Little Rukia has grown up, so sure? Kachika Rukia's face became colder, and he said, A mere demon cat, the smell it exudes when it approaches cannot be concealed in any way. Shiguin Yorishi pulled off the mask on her face, revealing a weak-colored and extremely delicate face, and said with a playful smile on the corner of her mouth, Rukia is still so cute. Even though we haven't seen each other for nearly 100 years, you still can't forget my smell. It's embarrassing to praise my charm so indirectly. As soon as these words came out, it was like dropping a depth bomb on the calm lake. The explosive information contained in it not only shocked the Shinigami such as Komamura Sejin and Hitsugaya Toshiro, but also the look in Kachika Rukia's eyes when she looked at Rukia Kachika, which was also an expression of disbelief. That look was like discovering that her brother, who used to be a model of aristocracy in his behavior and manners, was actually a pervert in secret. In an instant, this made Byakuya Kachiki instinctively awaken a lot of unbearable and bad memories, and Byakuya Kachiki's icy facial features also clearly revealed the color of anger and shame, and he shouted directly. Demon Cat, so you were planning to become a member of the travel disaster now? That's just right, let me kill you with my own hands today. Shifu Yorishi said with a provocative and playful smile on her face. Then let's give it a try. After all, I promised my little master that I would ensure the safety of Kurosaki Ichigo and the others no matter what. After a pause, Shifu Yorishi licked his lips and said. It's just right. I also want to personally measure whether little Byakuya has grown up a little in the past 100 years. For a moment, this series of words that almost all pointed directly at Byakuya Kachiki's unbearable memories, and they were said one after another in front of Rukia Kachiki. In a sense, what is the difference between this and forcing Byakuya Kachiki, who attaches great importance to self-esteem and image, to perform a handstand washing in front of his sister? However, just when Byakuya Kachiki, who was completely angry and embarrassed, couldn't help but take action directly to kill this disgusting demon cat, another death god present, was also completely enraged. Little master. Under Kotetsu's extremely surprised gaze, Unohana Retsu exuded an aura that was completely different from his usual gentle aura, and walked forward step by step. Captain Kachiki, let me deal with Shifu Yorishi, no, let me handle it. Upon hearing this, Kachiki Byakuya looked at Unohana Retsu, the captain of the healing squad, and subconsciously wanted to refuse and ask Unohana Retsu to retreat. Feeling the aura emanating from Unohana Retsu, the words of refusal were inexplicably stuck in his throat and he couldn't speak. Although the expression on his face seemed to be gentle and elegant, but, in Kachiki Byakuya's eyes, there seemed to be a sense of great terror. On the contrary, Komamura Sujin, who was relatively slow to sense human emotions, subconsciously spoke to Unohana Retsu's figure walking forward. Captain Unohana, danger. Now is not the time for the healing squad to take action. Please retreat to the edge of the battlefield to prevent accidental injuries. While Komamura Sujin was speaking, he subconsciously raised his hand and placed it on Unohana Retsu's shoulder, trying to stop what he thought was an impulsive and unwise move. However, just as Komamura Sujin's palm was about to touch Unohana Retsu's shoulder, Unohana Retsu slightly tilted his head, and with slightly opened eyes, he glanced at Komamura Sujin. Komamura Sujin, whose true body is a werewolf, which is completely different from the spirit formed by the soul of a normal human, suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis. Subconsciously, Komamura Sujin suddenly retreated, and under the iron mask covering his face to conceal his identity as a werewolf, he let out a terrified cry similar to that of a wolf or dog. However, at this moment, no one paid attention to why Komamura Sujin, the captain, suddenly let out a wolf-like howl. Most of the attention was focused on Unohana Retsu, who walked out of the crowd and walked between the two sides. Obviously, Unohana Retsu's appearance and expression had not changed at all compared to the past, but there was a terrifying coldness on his body that made people's hearts shiver. Finally, Unohana Retsu smiled gently and spoke. Captain Shifu Yuan, long time no see, how about we get together alone? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 469. In the future. No. Guru, can I refuse? Compared to Kachiki Byakuya, who didn't know how terrifying Unohana Retsu was, Shifu Yorishi was undoubtedly quite clear about Unohana Retsu's background. Under the seemingly gentle and spring-like appearance, he was undoubtedly the most terrifying evil spirit in the entire Soul Society. What made Shifu Yorishi even more confused was that she had no idea what had aroused such a terrifying murderous intent in Unohana Retsu, so that Unohana Retsu was destined to ask for a reunion with her. That won't do. We are good sisters. It's rare for us to meet. It's just right for us to have some intimate conversations. Unohana Retsu said gently, but the tone revealed a kind of naked killing intent that was becoming more and more obvious. Shifu Yorishi's heart tightened, and she spoke tentatively. Actually, there are too many things to do today, so why don't we meet again later, and I'll come to visit you in person, how about that? Later. In an instant, Unohana Retsu completely withdrew the gentle smile on his face, and slowly put one hand on the handle of the zanpakutō in his hand, and slowly spoke. If that's the case, I'm afraid there will be no chance in the future. Shifenjin Yorishi. At this moment, feeling the blood-colored spiritual pressure that Unohana could hardly suppress, Shifenjin Yorishi's hair almost stood up instantly. Captain Unohana, move for real? If you stay any longer, I'm afraid, it will be even worse. In a flash, Shifenjin Yorishi's figure instantly turned into a shadow and disappeared, leaving behind a sentence that echoed in the double-killing hill, and almost in the blink of an eye, he rushed into the forest at the bottom of the double-killing hill on one side. Ichigo, Rai, you're on your own. Before Ichigo Kurosaki and Rashida could react to Yorishi Shoin's almost escaping behavior, Unohana suddenly showed his amazing instant step attainment and quickly chased in the direction of Yorishi Shoin. After a few ups and downs, Yorishi Shoin and Unohana completely escaped from the spiritual pressure sensing range of Ichigo Kurosaki and Byakuya Kachiki and others in an instant. In an instant, on the double-killing hill, the situation where Ichigo Kurosaki was confidently fighting against Byakuya Kachiki and others 3-3 suddenly became 2-3. Suddenly, the corners of Ichigo Kurosaki and Rashida's mouths twitched, and they instinctively took a step back. Although they had experienced a series of battles in the Seireitei, Ichigo Kurosaki and Rashida had a full understanding and confidence in their own combat power. However, being beaten by a group and fighting alone are two completely different situations. As strong as Ishirai was, when his muscle dragon form was fully exerted, facing the combined forces of Kakushansui and Jikitid Jushiro who had only reached the Shy Guy, the whole process was like killing a chicken, and all the struggles became Kakushansui's amusement. Kurosaki Ichigo suggested in a low voice. Hey, Rai, 3, you pick 2 at random, and I'll take care of the rest. Ishidori's face darkened, and he said sarcastically. How about I pick all the Shinigami except these 3, and you take care of the other 3? How can I take care of them? Don't forget Uncle Kurosaki's advice, and leave Soul Society as soon as possible after rescuing Rukia. Kurosaki Ichigo said anxiously. Compared to us, the pressure on Uncle Kurosaki's side is even worse. After saying this, Ishidori no longer had the mind to argue with Kurosaki Ichigo, and his thoughts quickly turned inward, and he said, I will deal with the 1-star Komamura Sujin and the 2-star Hitsuge Ayashiro, and you deal with the 3-star Kachiki Byakuya. In the shocked eyes of Kachiki Rukia who was caught in the middle, Ichigo Kurosaki, the former Shinigami agent who was even inferior to himself, actually agreed so confidently and lightly. Suddenly, Rukia Kachiki spoke anxiously. Hey! Ichigo, you idiot, what nonsense are you talking about? Brother's strength is unfathomable. You can't be his opponent at all. Don't worry about me, just run away. Onion head, since you have been rescued, you should be prepared to be rescued. At this time, just stand behind me and shout for help twice. As Ichigo Kurosaki said this, he put Rukia Kachiki in his arms on the ground behind him and rubbed her head proudly again. After the special training from Uncle Kurosaki, a 3-star threat like Byakuya Kachiki is no match for me. However, before Ichigo Kurosaki could finish his words, in front of Rukia Kachiki's horrified eyes, Byakuya Kachiki's noble figure suddenly appeared in front of him, looking down at Ichigo Kurosaki with indifference, and the zanpakutō in his hand turned into an after-image and chopped towards Ichigo Kurosaki's arm that was rubbing Rukia Kachiki's head. A mere disaster, however, unlike the expected arm that defiled the body of the Kachiki clan and flew high, the zanpakutō Zanjitsu suddenly appeared in front of the zanpakutō Senbon Bancho. Dang! A crisp and fierce collision sounded. In response to Byakuya Kachiki's indifferent eyes, Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes seemed to be burning with flames and said, Kachiki Byakuya, I'm here to avenge those 2 swords in my present life. Oh, if you can do it, just give it a try. Almost at the moment when Ichigo Kurosaki and Byakuya Kachiki finished their words, Rashida took the initiative to rush towards Komamura Sujin and Hitsuge Ayashiro, knowing that his simple queency skills were not worth mentioning in the eyes of the captain level. Rashida did not hesitate at all. He took a few steps and his body size suddenly increased. Rip. In an instant, the seemingly tall, thin and delicate high school student with glasses turned into a muscular monster that was even bigger than Komamura Sujin. His shirt burst instantly, and only the tough overalls were tightly stretched on his body. Muscle dragon form. This scene with a huge contrast also made Hitsuge Ayashiro, who was often ridiculed by Ranjai Matsumoto for his short stature, opened his eyes wide, revealing deep shock and a bit of yearning. As for Komamura Sujin, he was the first to pass Hitsuge Ayashiro, and took the initiative to rush towards Ishidori. Two pure brute forces collided on the double-killing hill, boom. At the same time, in the other side of the double-killing hill, the raging flames that seemed to burn everything also rose up. Almost in the blink of an eye, the Confession Palace, the representative building complex representing the majesty of the Seireitei, was completely enveloped. Moreover, the two extremely huge spiritual pressures also collided with each other in the center of the raging flames, causing most of the death gods in the Seireitei to suddenly feel their spirits sinking instinctively. Chapter 470. Flowing Blade Jacker. In fact, it was not only the Shinigami outside the Confession Palace who felt their spirits sink under the collision of the two spiritual pressures. Kikushansui and others who followed Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni could clearly feel how exaggerated the awe-inspiring spiritual pressure was. Unlike Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni's ancient and extremely hot spiritual pressure, the spiritual pressure emanating from Senju Makutō at this moment was like an endless sea of stars, which made Kikushansui feel depressed. Although spiritual pressure is by no means completely equal to strength, the strength of spiritual pressure is undoubtedly a sign of a strong person. Sure enough, Kurosaki Makutō didn't take it seriously even when he fought with us before. Kikushansui said in a deep voice. Yukitsuja coughed a few times, an abnormal blush appeared on his face, and then he said, "But doesn't this also mean that Kurosaki Makutō has no ill will towards us?" No, it should be said, he does have the potential to kill Captain Aizen instantly, and everything may be planned by him in secret, and even, he is better than the founder of the Queency 1,000 years ago. At this point, Kikushansui did not continue, but Yukitsuja understood what Kikushansui meant. Although Yukitsuja and Kikushansui did not really experience that era, as the direct disciples of Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni, they undoubtedly knew a lot of secrets. Since the founder of the Queency, Ithwatch, was defeated by Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni 1,000 years ago, no matter how the Seireitei pursued him, he completely disappeared. The man in front of him, the man named Kurosaki Makutō, may not be, and Kikushansui was not the only one who had this idea. At this moment, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni, who had fully released the power of his zanpakutō, Rising Jacker, and completely enveloped the entire Kanzaku Palace, did not have this suspicion. The raging flames that enveloped the Palace of Confessions undoubtedly meant that Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni was willing to burn down the important building complex of the Seireitei to the ground, in order to seal Senju Makutō inside and not allow him any chance to escape. At this moment, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni opened his eyes slightly, with his upper body full of scars naked, exuding a mighty aura that seemed to suppress everything, staring at Senju Makutō. As for Senju Makutō, he still had his hands in his pockets, as if he just happened to be walking by the Palace of Confessions with a relaxed demeanor, and even smiled at Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni and took the initiative to greet him. "Good afternoon, Captain Yamamoto." This greeting also made Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni startled. If it weren't for the fact that the spiritual pressure of both sides was still colliding fiercely, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni would have had the illusion of dreaming back hundreds of years ago, when he was walking in the Shinem Spiritual Academy hiding his identity and accidentally met a freshman who was ignorant of youth. Then, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni's face became colder and he scolded. "You're lunatic, at this point, you still dare to despise me like this?" "No," Senju Makutō shook his head and replied. "On the contrary, it is precisely because of respect that Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni is one of the few people in the Seireitei who deserves respect and greetings. If you still have a sense of awe, why do you do such a rebellious and lunatic thing?" Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni questioned. Senju Makutō thought for a while and replied. "Because, Kachika Rukia can be regarded as my student. As a teacher, witnessing the death of a student and being indifferent is against the teacher's ethics." Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni's expression became more angry and he shouted. "Do you think your so-called teacher's ethics are above the justice and dignity of the Seireitei?" If the justice and dignity of the Seireitei that Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni had to maintain in the past, even at the cost of launching a war to eliminate a large number of queencies, existed only to kill a girl whose crime was not punishable by death, then why isn't pure teacher's ethics a little more noble? However, it is obvious that in terms of pure verbal advantage, Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni is obviously not as good as Senju Makutō. This rhetorical question, which combines the positions of a queency and a teacher, made Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni not know where to start his rebuttal. "The lunatic, is all you can say." Yamamoto Jinrai Shibukuni, who had stopped, began to approach Senju Makutō again and spoke. "Today, no matter how you argue, you must pay the price for the evil deeds you committed by breaking into the Seireitei. Senju Cheng saw this and sneered, as if he was somewhat helpless. Sure enough, the stubborn old man can't be manipulated by simple words. However, before Senju Cheng could finish his words, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, who was anchored to the extreme step by step, suddenly came to Senju Cheng with a blazing flame. Madman, I will teach you how to look at everything in the world with awe. Torch. In an instant, everything turned into ashes and dust wherever the zanpakutō, Raijin Jaka, held in the hand of Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni passed. The violent and extremely hot tornado-shaped flame wall wrapped Senju Cheng in it one step faster than Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. Scorching. Only when you're really in it, facing this peak that has stood in Soul Society for thousands of years and has supported the 13th Division to this day, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. Only then can you understand what a terrifying existence this is. It was clearly just Raijin Jaka in the Shikai state, and it was not the Bankai Zandachi that was reported to be enough to evaporate the moisture of the entire Soul Society and even destroy the entire Seireitei after the aftermath of Bankai was released. However, when it came into close contact with the violent and hot flames, even Senju Cheng, who had completely completed his ultimate spirit body, once again felt the hot feeling. In comparison, even the heat of Hadano. 73. Twin Lotus Blue Fire Drop was only as hot as a candle in front of zanpakutō Raijin Jaka. Take your arrogance and turn it into ashes under the extreme heat. As the tornado-shaped flame wall completely enveloped Senju Cheng, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni once again put his zanpakutō Raijin Jaka into the scabbard, lowered his body slightly, and once again assumed the posture of drawing the sword and slashing. The next moment, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni opened his eyes a little and whispered a sentence. First slash. Boom. In an instant, endless flames burst out from the blade of the drawn zanpakutō, Raijin Jaka, condensing into a giant flame blade that was even more exaggerated and terrifying than the last time, and slashed towards the tornado-shaped flame wall in front of him. With a sweep of the sword, the flames burned everything. The hundreds of meters high buildings of the Penance Palace that originally stood in the surroundings were evaporated in a blink of an eye, so that the sunlight easily fell on the dark ground of the Penance Palace where it should not have fallen. Chapter 471. Super Ancestor U. This shocking blow. Even the captains like Kakushansui who were watching from the side could not help but swallow their saliva quietly. However, the next moment, as the giant flame blade formed by slashed past, the tornado-shaped flame wall that had been mostly wiped out began to slowly dissipate the remaining flames, but a human figure with a clear outline still appeared. Bang! Suddenly, the human figure raised his palm and swung it to the side. A strong wind suddenly blew away the remaining flames around him, and Senju Cheng, whose clothes were mostly burned, appeared in front of everyone. Compared with Senju Cheng's body that seemed to be completely constructed by the creator, large patches of blue veins appeared on the surface of Senju Cheng's body. Still blood suit. Almost instantly, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni determined what this ability was. But, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni's long white beard shook slightly, and commented in a deep voice. Such a level of stasis blood suit. Even my Raijin Jaka can withstand it, and it's not much worse than the original Quincy. Senju Cheng smiled. He was not surprised that the Quincy ability he imitated could even deceive Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. In a sense, in the past few years in the present world, through the study of Kurosaki Musaki, Senju Cheng had long been able to make himself indistinguishable from a real pure-blooded Quincy. Then, Senju Cheng tore off a strip of cloth from his windbreaker that was mostly burned, tied his long white hair behind his head, and said, "The praise from Shinraisai, in my opinion, is a mockery." Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni's eyes revealed a hint of confusion and surprise. Originally, when Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni asked this question, in addition to praise, he might have also tested Senju Cheng's reaction to the name the original Quincy. As a younger generation, failing to surpass the ancestors is undoubtedly a sign of declining and incompetence from generation to generation. After a pause, after fixing his hair that might affect his vision in battle, Senju Cheng's expression became more excited and he spoke. "I have long yearned for the strength of Shinraisai for many years. I am glad to fight with Shinraisai today." "Why?" Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni asked. Senju Cheng's voice sank and he answered. "I was defeated by you, and I should seek your advice to avenge my defeat." "Elder? Youthwatch?" Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni narrowed his eyes, and had a deep understanding of the man in front of him, Makoto Senju, who seemed to be disrespectful and contemptuous of Overwatch in his words, but seemed to attach greater importance to the glory of the Quincy clan. The raging flames burning in the Raijinjaka in his hand increased by 3 points, making the body of Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni look like an invincible existence, and he shouted, "If you are not afraid of death, you can give it a try." Makoto Senju's eyes condensed, and he raised his palm towards the sky. Suddenly, a large number of blue light spots quickly formed above the entire confession palace. However, what surprised Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni was that the blue light spots that continued to gather together did not form the large number of spiritual bows mentioned in the information reported by Kokushansui. On the contrary, they were blue spirit swords of various styles. Almost in the blink of an eye, a vast starry sky seemed to appear above the confession palace, which was shrouded in raging flames, and spirit swords floated above the confession palace. Just when Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni was ready for those spirit swords to fall like a rainstorm, Senju Makoto opened his raised palm. "Don't worry, these weapons won't fall in an instant." Then, a spirit sword fell in front of Senju Makoto in an instant, and then was held in his hand, and then he spoke. According to records, the founder of the Quincy used the sword called Quincy Crusaders and was defeated by you. Therefore, Master Seireitei, you don't mind if I challenge you in the same way, right? You're indeed an arrogant fellow. Are you a mere 20-something kid qualified to compete with me in Kendo? With a roar, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni was almost wrapped in blazing flames. As he took a step forward, he held his zanpakutō, Raijinjaka, in both hands and slashed at the air in the direction of Senju Makoto. In an instant, the huge sword pressure formed by the sword swept the extremely hot flames, and it seemed to have turned into a giant Raijinjaka that had expanded hundreds of times and fell towards Senju Makoto. Senju Makoto held the Rizi sword, and as his failing kick moved, he turned sideways, but he rushed towards Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni actively, closely following the large piece of flame. Then, under the shocked gazes of the Shinigami and even Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, Senju Makoto, who had never shown his close combat ability, slashed at Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni with the same two-handed sword-holding posture. Boom! The next moment, the zanpakutō Raijinjaka and the Rishi sword collided with each other. The extreme temperature almost made the Rishi sword formed by pure Rishi begin to melt visibly. But, it was blocked. Under the shocked gazes of Kokushansui, Yukita Jashiro, and even Zaraki Kenpachi, a mere Quincy actually fought Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni with swordsmanship. More importantly, that swordsmanship seemed to be completely from Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's own swordsmanship style. The next moment, the Reishin in his hand was about to be burned to ashes by zanpakutō Raijinjaka. Senju Makoto raised his other hand, and another Reishin that was hanging on the confession palace fell into Senju Makoto's hand, and then slashed towards Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's waist. Two-sword style. Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, who was shocked at how Senju Makoto could master his own sword style, narrowed his eyes, and the flames on his zanpakutō Raijinjaka rolled up, completely burning the Reishin in front of him, and backhandedly blocked another attacking Reishin. However, this seemed to be the beginning. Even in front of Soul Society's strongest and oldest zanpakutō Raijinjaka, these Reishin made of pure high density would be burned in an instant. However, every time a Reishin in his hand was burned, another Reishin would fall into Senju Makoto's hand in time, and attack Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni frantically. Moreover, the double sword style used by Senju Makoto later was particularly discordant and strange. Even with Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni's experience, he had never seen this kind of kendo style. Chapter 472. This retreat, however, after a brief moment of surprise, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni quickly adapted to the somewhat special two-sword attack rhythm of Senju Makoto. Quincy Kid, a mere two-sword attack, as if stimulated by Senju Makoto's actions, Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni suddenly stepped forward with his left foot, and the zanpakutō Raijinjaka in his hand suddenly changed direction, from bottom to top. Suddenly, wherever the zanpakutō Raijinjaka passed, it also encircled the Reikoten held in both hands of Senju Makoto into the attack range, forcibly destroying the attack rhythm that Senju Makoto had been maintaining. The Reikoten held in both hands quickly melted. However, there was no panic in Senju Makoto's eyes, but he spoke instead. Did Seireitei misunderstand something? I never said that my kendo is a two-sword attack. What? The next moment, another Reikoten fell rapidly towards Senju Makoto. However, when Senju Cheng held the Reikotsu in both hands and reached his zanpakutō, Raijin Jaka, the Reikotsu stopped at Senju Cheng's mouth, and then was bitten by Senju Cheng. Then, in the eyes of the captains watching around who could hardly understand, the Reikotsu that was bitten by Senju Cheng actually burst out with a slash that made people side-splitting. This attack was completely beyond the traditional sword fighting of Soul Society, and it also made Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni instinctively retreat and dodge. This retreat made Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's eyes appear a little dazed. For so many years, since the establishment of the Gotti 13, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni has never retreated even a step on the battlefield. It was also that absolute strength and absolute power that allowed Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni to maintain the special status of the Gotti 13 inches, the Seireitei, which was originally completely controlled by the nobles. Even the 4 nobles who have existed in Soul Society for tens of millions of years are proud to join the 13th division of the Gotti. Perhaps, this retreat can be completely excused by the suddenness of Senju Cheng's swordsmanship that is completely different from the traditional Soul Society, but Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni inexplicably developed a feeling. This retreat is not just a short step for me on the battlefield, but the times will change because of this step of retreat. An unprecedented sense of decadence emerged in the gradually aging heart of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, but the next moment, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's eyes regained their previous sharpness and majesty, looking at Senju Cheng in front of him, who had replaced his hands with 2 brand new spirit swords again, and said in a deep voice, "It's ridiculous, kid. Do you think the number of weapons used in Kendo represents power?" Senju Cheng raised his eyes, and his calm eyes seemed to see through Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's thoughts, and answered, "Mr. Shinigami, you don't think that eternal immutability is the best, do you? If the one-sword style can't take the new path, the three-sword style may not be impossible." This remark, which seemed to have a hidden meaning, seemed to be accusing the corrupt system of the Central 46th Room, and that Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni still insisted on and implemented it, which made Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni angry. And Senju Cheng naturally didn't expect that these few words could shake the idea of Captain General Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni. However, this three-sword style is indeed an unprecedented idea for this world. The Kendo school opened by Unohana was originally formed by absorbing the essence of countless Kendo schools. After Senju Cheng completely mastered Unohana-Retsu's Kendo school, guided by some interesting memories, the so-called three-sword style was created. This was just an attempt made by Senju Cheng in recent years when he was very idle. The purpose is to avoid associating Kurosaki Cheng with Unohana-Retsu by using this style that is completely different from the traditional swordsmanship of Soul Society when close combat is needed. Under the series of intentional and unintentional stimulations from Senju Cheng, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's chest rose and fell slightly, his eyes became sharper and more majestic, and the flames rising from his zanpakutō, Raijin Jaka, gradually subsided. "Kid, I will tell you that it is not some random attempts at swordsmanship that can be called the creation of a viable style," Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni said, holding his zanpakutō tightly with both hands, posing a pure swordsmanship stance. Seeing this, Senju Cheng also realized what Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni meant. Obviously, when Shikai Raijin Jaka still failed to defeat Senju Cheng, unless Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni risked the destruction of the entire Seireitei by Bankai Zanpakutō, the possibility of a quick victory over Senju Cheng was already slim. More importantly, from the beginning to the end, Senju Cheng had been posing as if he was going to deal with Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni with Kendo, and from time to time he was faintly questioning Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's persistence. This undoubtedly completely stimulated the pride and belief in the old man's heart. Then, Senju Cheng responded by posing a fighting stance with the posture of 3 swords. "If Mr. Shinigami is interested, I will accompany you." The next moment, the two of them took a step forward at the same time. Dang! This is a life and death Kendo duel. It is also a conflict of 2 completely different beliefs. At the same time, in a forest quite a distance away from the double-killing hill, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, dressed in black, is like an incredibly sensitive black cat, and his figure turns into a residual shadow and shuttles through it at a fast speed. However, Shifen Yuan Yorishi's expression is getting uglier and uglier. If Shifen Yuan Yorishi wants to escape at the speed of Shifen Yuan Yorishi, it is naturally impossible for Unohana-Retsu to forcibly catch up. However, Shifen Yuan Yorishi felt the spiritual pressure emanating from Unohana-Retsu, who was following him indomitable not far behind him, and his hair stood up more and more. It is well known that when one person chases another in anger, the less he can catch up, the faster the anger will accumulate. At this moment, the spiritual pressure emanating from Unohana fluctuated and changed constantly, and Shifen Yuan Yorishi clearly felt that Unohana was even angrier than when he was at the double killing hill. The blood-colored spiritual pressure was almost spreading unscrupulously. This reminded Shifen Yuan Yorishi of the various records about Unohana 1,000 years ago, and the memory of being almost chopped to death by Unohana when he was in the hollow about 200 years ago. No, if I run any further, I'm afraid the consequences will be more serious. Shifen Yuan Yorishi suddenly stopped and kept comforting herself. It's okay. Captain Unohana and I have never had any enmity. It must be just a small misunderstanding. P.S. I have a serious writer's block, so there are only 2 updates today. Sorry. Chapter 473. Fellow travelers. A small misunderstanding, as Yorishi Shoin muttered. Various events related to Unohana flashed in her mind almost continuously. However, since she was forced to flee Soul Society more than 100 years ago, Yorishi Shoin has never had any formal contact with Unohana during this period, and after Yorishi Shoin paused for a moment, a figure came from behind and landed about 50 meters away from Yorishi Shoin. Captain Shoin, why are you in such a hurry? I just want to reminisce with Yorishi Shoin and say some heartfelt words. Unohana voice was still so gentle and warm, but the aura emanating from Unohana made Yorishi Shoin instinctively shudder. It was as if the killing intent could not be suppressed. Yorishi Shoin forced a smile on his face with some difficulty, raised his hand and said, "Hey, Captain Unohana, it's been a long time since we last met. The last time we met was to discuss Vice Captain Makoto Senju's training for Shunpo." At this moment, Shifen Yuan Yorishi almost instinctively chose Makoto Senju as the starting point to ease the atmosphere between the two sides. After all, only Makoto Senju is the biggest bond between Shifen Yuan Yorishi and Unohana, and the relationship between them is quite good. Speaking of which, we can both be regarded as Makoto's teachers. You're his Kido teacher, and I'm his Shunpo teacher. When talking about Makoto Senju, Shifen Yuan Yorishi couldn't help but recall the boy who left a very deep impression on him, and his expression was obviously much bleak when he spoke. It's just a pity that Makoto only served as your vice captain for a short period of a few decades, and then he completely left Captain Unohana. This was originally a statement from Shifen Yuan Yorishi's heart, but it made Unohana face visibly gloomy. Teacher. Leave me? Hehe. Unohana smiled and said. It seems that Captain Shifen Jin knows a lot. Ah? Shifen Jin Yorishi was stunned when she heard this, and she was suspicious. Unohana words seemed to be hinting at something in Shifen Jin Yorishi's ears. Could it be about the cause of death of Senju Makoto? In fact, whether it was Uehara Kisuke and Shifen Jin Yorishi, or the other members of the Masked Corps in the real world, they almost immediately placed their suspicion on Izan Sosok. However, after a series of overt and covert investigations by Shifen Jin Yorishi, no effective information was obtained. Now, Unohana attitude is more like he has noticed something, and discovered the true face of Izan Sosok and guessed his plan with Uehara Kisuke. In an instant, Shifen Jin Yorishi's face was happy and said, I see. I didn't expect that Captain Unohana and I are on the same side. On the same side? Unohana squinting gentle eyes slowly opened, and the murderous intent that burst out from them was almost like a raging wave, and the zanpakutō held in Unohana hand also revealed a section of the blade. Sorry, I don't plan to let others follow my path for the time being. Almost at the moment when Shifen Yorishi was frightened by the murderous intent and spiritual pressure that Unohana burst out, Unohana disappeared on the spot. At this moment, the elegant and quiet Unohana seemed to have instantly transformed into a unique beast, and the zanpakutō in her hand slashed towards Shifen Yorishi without the slightest hesitation. What's more, it's just a wild cat that took advantage of the master's inattention to steal fish in the dark. Puff. Perhaps, Shifen Yorishi's instant step is definitely worthy of the name Instant God, but the speed of Unohana blade is almost beyond common sense. Before Shifen Yuan Yorishi could think about the meaning of Unohana words, the blade and Shifen Yuan Yorishi's chest were almost less than half a palm. Puff, the blade pierced through. However, Shifen Yuan Yorishi's spirit seemed to disappear in an instant, leaving only a black coat on the blade. 4 Maple 3. Void Cicada Unohana seemed to have expected this. His indifferent and terrifying eyes swept to the side in an instant, as if catching some traces. At the same time, the dark sword hitting his other hand was handed over first. A trace of blood bloomed on the dark sword at an extremely fast speed. When Shifu Yorishi stopped 100 meters away, there was a blood hole on the shoulder near the heart. Shifu Yorishi's forehead was almost visibly sweating. At that moment, if he hadn't intuitively sensed something at an extremely fast speed and slightly tilted his body, I'm afraid his heart would have been pierced. Unlike the last time when she lost control in the hollow state, now that she was conscious, Shifu Yorishi understood more deeply how high her swordsmanship level was. Terrible. As expected of the first-generation Kenpachi, she was once known as the Seireitei, a woman that countless nobles and swordsmen in Soul Society were terrified of. Shifu Yorishi looked at Unohana with a serious look and spoke. Unohana threw the dark sword in his hand and put it back into the wide Aori sleeves. His eyes slowly turned and lingered on Shifu Yorishi's neck for a breath, then said, "Captain Shifu, you are too kind. I am no longer a Kenpachi. Now I am just a senior who wants to teach the younger generation a lesson about some rude behavior." However, Shifu Yorishi was full of doubts about Unohana statement. He was extremely tense and spoke. "Disrespectful. I don't understand." "It doesn't matter if you don't understand," Unohana smiled. The zanpakutō in her hand reflected the cold light under the sunlight, and the blood-colored spiritual pressure that continued to emanate from her body dyed almost all the surrounding forests with a different color. However, if Captain Shifu uses the trick again, he may really die. Shifu Yorishi took a deep breath, and a large amount of white lightning suddenly appeared on her back and shoulders. The high-concentration compressed ghost arts visible to the naked eye were manipulated by Shifu Yorishi to gather towards her arms. Compared with Seireitei's Shunhong, as the true creator of Shunhong, Shifu Yorishi's use of Shunhong is undoubtedly more extreme. But, if the opponent is Captain Unohana, Shifu Yorishi, who maintained Shunhong, slowly raised her hand to half-cover her face, and a spiritual pressure different from that of the god of death suddenly burst out from Shifu Yorishi's body. Chapter 474. Void and instantaneous. The next moment, as Yorishi Shirin's hand pulled from her face, a mask that was almost identical to the hollows covered her face. Ratsu, boom. And it was no longer the pure Ratsu of the Shinigami, but a huge Ratsu mixed with the power of the hollow, with Yorishi Shirin as the center, bursting out like a hurricane in all directions. The white lightning that originally maintained the instant boon form seemed to be covered with a layer of blab, and exploded in a larger area around. Unohana eyes were still so indifferent and calm, and he spoke. "Oh? Similar to the state of more than 100 years ago, hollowed out. It can't be helped. After all, the opponent is Captain Unohana. If I don't take it seriously and get killed by Captain Unohana, I'll have to go to hell with that brat Senju Cheng." However, originally this was just a teasing remark that Shifu Yorishi said subconsciously to ease the atmosphere, but it sounded extremely harsh to Unohana ears, although Unohana believed in Senju Cheng very much, but it's better to wipe out such unpleasant things. Unohana blood-colored spiritual pressure was no longer suppressed. The materialized spiritual pressure exploded, even directly dispersing Unohana braids that were originally tied to her chest, so that the soft black hair fluttered wildly, making Unohana look like a completely different person than usual. Then, Unohana took a step forward, crossed the distance between the two sides in the blink of an eye, and slashed the zanpakutō in his hand towards Shifu Yorishi. While maintaining the state of instant boom and hollowification at the same time, a certain idea flashed through Shifu Yorishi's mind. However, Shifu Yorishi didn't have time to think, and the lightning formed by the intersection of black and white gathered in her arms to block the falling blade of Unohana. Boom. Countless crazy black and white lightning seemed to be chopped into large pieces in an instant. Countless arcs of electricity escaped, causing huge damage to the trees. A large number of terrifying aftermaths broke out one after another. At the same time, on the double killing hill. Boom. As the huge roars echoed, the entire double killing hill shook. Compared with the speed and beauty of the battle collision between Kurosaki Ichigo and Kachika Byakuya, the battle between Ishida, who maintained the muscle dragon form, and Komamura Sujin and Hitsuge Yatsushiro was extremely violent. With his bare hands, Ryashida relied on his extremely strong body to withstand the attacks of Komamura Sujin and Hitsuge Yatsushiro at the same time. Compared with Hitsuge Yatshiro's short body, Ryashida looked like a muscular monster. Even in the eyes of some Shinigami watching the battle from afar, it seemed that Hitsuge Yatshiro had to jump up to hit Ryashida's knee. Moreover, Ryashida repeatedly fought back against Komamura Sejin while constantly colliding head-on with Hitsuge Yatshiro's attacks. This made Hitsuge Yatshiro, who had an extremely strong sense of self-esteem, so angry that his whole face almost turned red. When he was about to use his Bankai first, boom! With a huge collision, Komamura Sejin, who was maintaining his zanpakutō, Heaven's punishment and manipulating a supergiant zanpakutō to attack in sync with his main body, was once again pushed back several steps. Wait, Komamura Sejin's slightly panting voice sounded under the iron mask, and he spoke to Hitsuge Yatshiro. Captain Hitsuge, you are seriously injured and have not yet fully recovered. In this situation, it would be too much for you to use Bankai again. Hitsuge Yatshiro answered stubbornly. Bankai, it's a piece of cake. No, what I mean is, Captain Hitsuge, can you leave the opponent in front of you to me? Komamura Sejin said calmly. Relatively speaking, the advantage of my zanpakutō lies in its amazing destructive power and head-on collision. I, who hold the title of Gotti, will never be defeated by a mere Ryogotwu. Hitsuge Yatshiro hesitated for a moment, nodded slowly, and said, I understand, Captain Komamura, but I may intervene at any time when necessary. The current Seireitei will not allow captains to continue to lose their composure. Of course. Komamura Sejin responded, and with the sudden surge of spiritual pressure on his body, a loud shout suddenly rang out from under the iron mask. Bankai! Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mew! In an instant, from behind Komamura Sejin, a supergiant black-armored warrior appeared out of thin air. The broadsword in his hand alone was hundreds of meters long, and his whole body exuded an astonishing pressure and might. The terrifying size caused large areas of spiderweb-like cracks to appear on the ground of the double-killing hill at the moment of its appearance. Although I may not have the amazing spirit and fighting power of Mr. Senju Cheng, who once transformed himself into a wooden Buddha and resisted thousands of Urikeis, I am not inferior to anyone in my determination to protect the wall of the Seireitei. Komamura Sejin took a step forward suddenly, and the zanpakutō in his hand slashed towards Ishidarai from a distance, and the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mew behind him followed suit. The sword, which was hundreds of meters long, tore through bursts of sonic booms and slashed towards Ishidarai. From a distance, it was as if the zanpakutō was slashing towards a tiny ant. At this moment, Ishidarai's face also looked unusually solemn. Ishidarai clearly remembered the general ability information of the captains of the 13th Gotti Division. Perhaps, Komamura Sejin's zanpakutō had defects such as slow movement, so that Komamura Sejin's threat level could only be considered 1 star. However, in terms of destructive power alone, the destructive power of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mew is quite astonishing. Retreating, and then attacking the relatively slow-moving Komamura Sejin in other ways, is undoubtedly the most correct strategy to eliminate Komamura Sejin. But, Ishidarai's face condensed, and his hands suddenly clasped together towards his head. Bang! As the hundreds-meter-long sword fell, it almost completely covered Ishidarai, and easily cut out a huge gully hundreds of meters long. It's over. Just as Hitsuge Yatshiro said this subconsciously, he suddenly sensed Ishidarai's spiritual pressure. A gust of wind blew past, blowing away the smoke that filled the battlefield, and what appeared in front of everyone was the eye-popping scene. The hundreds-meter-long sword was actually clamped above the head by Ishidarai, whose veins were bulging all over his body, with only his clasped hands. Chapter 475. Creating a new justice. Although Ishidarai was hit so hard that a huge pit collapsed on the ground, and the lenses of his glasses were shattered by the huge impact, Ishidarai blocked the hundreds of meters-long sword with this exaggerated posture. The huge contrast made the death god who witnessed this absurd scene shocked. Is this really something that the Quincy clan can do? A thought emerged uncontrollably, and this action also won Ishidarai the respect of Komamura Sejin. Komamura Sejin raised the big sword cut by the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Mew and spoke loudly. I am Komamura Sejin, the captain of the 7th Division, and I am the traveler. Tell me your name. Rai. Quincy, Ishidarai. Ishidarai stepped out of the deep pit step by step and responded. What a pity. If we were not on opposite sides, just based on your courage that is no less than that of a great hero, I would have invited you to drink. After a pause, Komamura Sejin said in a serious tone. But in order to repay the kindness of the Captain General and maintain the dignity of the Seireitei, I have no choice but to kill Lord Rai here today. Ishidarai moved his arms, and his bones seemed to make a series of firecracker-like sounds at the same time, responding. What a pity, Captain Komamura, the consciousness I carry is not inferior to yours. Really? Komamura Sejin asked with a touch of boldness in his tone. Does Lord Rai have no weapons? If you are just barehanded, the next attack is definitely not an attack that can be resisted by consciousness alone. Weapons? Ishirai hesitated for a moment, and then spoke. I didn't want to use it so soon, but since it's Captain Komamura's request, then, as Ishirai raised his hand and pulled off the cylindrical pendant tied around his neck and held it in his hand, a brilliant blue spirit light suddenly burst out from the palm of his hand. The next moment, the blue spirit light gradually dissipated, and in Ishirai's hand, there appeared a huge, long and thick halberd, all white, with a large number of complicated and exquisite patterns on the halberd handle, and the halberd head was quite ferocious. Kukshin of the soul. Ishirai said lightly, and the halberd of the soul was almost unable to be controlled by the palm of his hand that was almost maintaining the muscle dragon form and swung it to the side. The air was instantly torn apart, and the aftermath was almost visible to the naked eye, tearing the ground apart. In that case, be careful, Lord Rai. In response to Ishirai, Komamura Sejin once again controlled the huge sword of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Myojin to cut down, and the terrifying power seemed to be about to cut the entire double punishment hill in half. And Ishirai took a somewhat strange posture, turned his back to Komamura Sejin, raised one shoulder slightly, lowered the other shoulder, and held the halberd handle with both hands. Just as the huge sword of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Myojin was about to fall on Ishirai's head, Ishirai's shoulder shook rapidly, and the soul-extinguishing kun halberd instantly turned into a stream of light and swung upwards. Boom boom. The unprecedented huge roar almost shook the entire double punishment hill as if it was about to collapse, and the shocking aftermath even forcibly interrupted Ichigo Kurosaki and Byakuya Kachika who were fighting on the other side. Along with the roar, there was also an extremely crisp and piercing sound of breaking, crack. The hundreds-meter-long giant sword in the hand of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment King standing on the double punishment hill suddenly broke in the middle, and a white light instantly pierced a large hole in the chest of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment King. In an instant, Komamura Sejin, who was looking at the injury on the chest of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment King in astonishment, had not yet reacted, and his chest seemed to have also received synchronous damage from the Black Road Heavenly Punishment King. Komamura Sejin's whole body was shocked, and the iron mask he was wearing was instantly shattered, revealing the wolf head that was completely different from that of a human, and a large amount of blood instantly spurted out of his chest. Puff, Captain Komamura! Hitsuge Ichiro exclaimed, but before Hitsuge Ichiro could step forward to support him, Komamura Sejin's burly and huge body fell straight to the ground. The spiritual pressure weakened rapidly, and the exaggerated Black Road Heavenly Punishment Myoko also dissipated directly into the air. Looking at the fallen Komamura Sejin, Ishirai's eyes behind the broken glasses flashed a few traces of guilt for being an honest man. However, Ishirai has never been that kind of rigid and honest man. On the contrary, the dark side learned from Senju Cheng makes Ishirai's fighting strategy corresponding to the moral bottom line quite flexible and changeable. The bare-handed attack of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Myoko was just to make Komamura Sejin have some illusion that Ishirai is also an honest man. Ishirai's goal is to make Komamura Sejin relax his vigilance, so as to find an opportunity to kill the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Myoko in one blow. Otherwise, once Komamura Sejin completely lets go of his moral bottom line and joins forces with Hitsuge Toshiro of Bankai, Ishirai is not sure that he can win 2-1. Ishirai apologized silently. I'm sorry, compared to Captain Komamura, my weapon still hides the power of others, and as the huge spiritual pressure after Komamura Sejin's Bankai quickly weakened, it instantly triggered a series of chain reactions in the entire Seireitei. Captain Komamura Sejin of the 7th Division was defeated. At this moment, in the midst of the panic and tense and solemn Seireitei, the area divided into the Noble Street was still so lively and noisy. The attack of the mere travel disaster did not affect the normal play of the nobles. Although, under the order issued by the Central 46th Office, the nobles were not allowed to leave the Noble Street and needed to be protected by the 6th Division. However, the large number of nobles gathered together, which made the entire Noble Street more lively. And the captain of the 9th Division, Cheng-ge, who was walking towards the main gate of Noble Street, sensed the rapidly weakening spiritual pressure of Komamura Sejin in the direction of the double-killing hill, and murmured, "My dear friend, the justice of the Seireitei should not be so pedantic and ignorant, but it doesn't matter. Unlike you who were defeated by the travel disaster, I will create a new justice in the Seireitei here and now." As Cheng-ge muttered to himself, the sudden appearance of this figure also attracted the attention of the members of the 6th Division who were responsible for guarding the noble street, and they subconsciously shouted, "Who is it?" It turned out to be Captain Cheng. "Excuse me, are you?" However, Cheng-ge walked past the two members of the 6th Division without stopping, and a line of blood appeared at their throats, making their voices stop abruptly. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.